the Abbasid Dynasty also being able to wall and then go trade wing very, very quickly. Maybe we'll see some trade going on, feudal aspect on Hill and Dale. All of our questions will be answered right now. Game 1, DeMu playing in the color red as the Abbasid Dynasty, spawning in the northwest part of the map. His opponent for this series will be RecoN, playing as the French, spawning in the southeastern part of the map. And we're taking a look at how these Empire War spawns actually happen. Abbasid with a market and houses around that House of Wisdom. French, again, that we've seen, just starting out with a couple extra population. Who doesn't love that?
Yeah, so it is the generation where it's that solo gold vein on your hill. You would have to move out of the hill, and we do see corner markets there. So I know you mentioned a little bit of trade wing. Well, it doesn't even necessarily have to be trade wing, as they already start with a market there right next to the House of Wisdom, you can see. So they can start getting that trade booming so quickly. That being said, RecoN has a great civilization to deny trade on the other side.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If I had to pick a civilization to try to take down traders, I think French would definitely be up there for me. Gonna go up with the School of Cavalry with 9 villagers, so he will be able to get a lot of units out pretty quickly.
Whoa. French going with some early spearmen across. And Abba, they do start with a ton of houses around their House of Wisdom, but going up to feudal age, I feel like it's just so easily to be denied. And more importantly, RecoN, he scouted out. I think he just saw that it's military wing. I was actually about to throw DeMu some shade over here because I was like, why is he going up with military wing? This seems so worthless. Like, you're getting like 4 units out, and it's not like the same effect of non-Empire Wars military wing. You don't really get damage, but it will prevent the damage that RecoN would have been able to do with this early spear play.
Yeah, with how many spearmen throwing torches at you, right? He's got about 4. One of the things I really like, which Vodka's showing also on the western part of your map, RecoN's going to send a villager all the way up there to wall. He's trying to wall out this trading post. I think he knows that Abbasid, just because of that early market, they can start getting traders at the drop of a hat, or if a drop of a hat takes about 15 seconds, he would have the ability to do it. Having a wall in that area just means he's got to rely on some other ways to improve himself economically. But with spearmen that are here, knights already in the queue, this could be difficult for DeMu.
Yeah, RecoN looking like he wants to play this a little bit more of kind of like an all-in tactic over here than the longer-term investments. Kind of just headed over to the base. You can see how many production buildings he was just dropping on the front side as well. And the first Royal Knight headed towards DeMu's side.
Yeah, and I think that knight, you can see the difference in army value, right? Just because how expensive those knights really are. And with DeMu only having 2 archers, you might only need 1 or 2 knights to try to take those down. Is RecoN also adding archers and has his own archery range? So we're seeing very, very quickly a 1-1-1 split from the French. And we're also not seeing from the French a second town center. He's going all in on military right now.
Yeah, exactly. And sending another Vil forward to potentially go try to wall that out. DeMu moving down to wall his west side, but he might have that realization that he's actually been walled in over there.
Yeah, I mean, we know what RecoN was most scared of, right? He was scared of that trade. So that's why he's walling him in. Also because, like you talked about, the Hill and Dale spawn, right? Having to move out when the Abbasid Dynasty doesn't necessarily want to do that, and especially not this early. They're trying to get their town centers. They're trying to get their economy going. DeMu has the second town center over here. He's trying to churn out some villagers. So hopefully he'll be able to catch up on the villager front.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too difficult. Obviously, those French town centers work a little bit harder, but still has that extra town center. But RecoN, he's got military just headed towards the base, and that front side where the House of Wisdom is, there's a ton of stuff to be taken down. And yeah, I mean, house is not the greatest thing to kind of focus on early, but more importantly, it's just the overall base of DeMu. Seems like the front side, he wasn't ever able to secure up.
No, the front side he wasn't able to secure up. I definitely agree, but I mean, take a look at DeMu spawn in general. I mean, in the back of his base is where his gold mine, his berry bushes, his wood line is. So it's going to be, I mean, it will be a little bit difficult for French to actually get in there, but I feel like if they take a good fight, they will definitely get in there. And it looks like 11 archers for RecoN. I really like his army composition if they went head to head.
Yeah, it's one of those that I feel the French, a lot of times they'll forget to make the spears, or early on they'll focus on knight archer, and then there gets to a point where they need spears to protect the archer mass, because it gets to a point where the knights can't do that, and the knights want to be taking good fights and not be trading and have to take fights, and it gets to a point where they have to take fights in that case unless spears are there.
Yeah, especially if we see DeMu come out with horsemen. Right, it's very difficult because you want the knights to protect the archers, and I guess they used to be a long, long time ago. But with you have a spear and horseman composition coming at you, you really can't use those knights as body blockers because the spearmen are going to eat them alive. So making spears, making sure if DeMu does go in that department is really, really good for him. DeMu trying to shore up some of his resources. It's a wall war, DrDabston. That's exactly what we have, and it looks like DeMu actually ended up winning it.
Oh, you said that a little too early as the scout. Oh, nope, it stepped out. Oh, okay, never mind. DeMu did win it. DeMu won it.
I was really hoping he won it because I didn't want to be wrong. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, it's one of those that RecoN just forgot to click that one little button that says stand ground. And at the same time, he loses not only the wall war, but loses the vision war now because his scout's trapped.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously for the French, that's really difficult, right? Because you have such a valuable army. You cannot throw them in any particular area, especially an unscouted area, and expect to be okay. You lose a decent amount of knights, especially that early game with how much it costs to make all of these knights. It's very difficult for you to come back after that. So only having one scout, hopefully he'll be able to use it in the trajectory around side the back of his base, or at least by the front, just to make sure he can size up what DeMu's got going on.
Yeah, archers, spears, knights starting to move forward a little bit. You can see that the numbers are favoring DeMu, but the value still is on the French side. And that's the story most of the time when it comes to French, and it's because of those knights. So when will this main engagement actually go down? I think one of the main keys for RecoN, trying to get that camel taken down as quick as possible so the camel unease debuff goes away.
Oh, you're exactly right. Yeah, sniping that camel is really, really important because those knights are the heavy hitters, right? That's what you have to take down the archer mass for DeMu. I would be hard-pressed to think 9 knights would prove to be effective against something like 30 archers, and especially with 25 spears. I said I was really, thinking RecoN had a good army composition, but with the amount of knights that RecoN doesn't have, I think it would be difficult for him to take a face-to-face because of how many spears. And look at DeMu finally going down off of his own hill, traversing over the dale to the south side, and I think if he takes this fight, he might be in good shape.
Yeah, it's one of those, he starts to take the fight right as RecoN moves out with his knights to, I think, go kill the boar, and so knights are not in good positions. RecoN having to fall back, taking a little bit of damage as he falls back towards home base, but this is where he's now getting to his defender's ground. He's on his high ground, he's on his hill, he can get his reinforcements in quicker, and the knights are circling, just trying to kill out those spears as best as possible.
Yeah, and this is something, as you see that flank coming in on the western side, I do want to compliment DeMu's micro right now because those spearmen were always behind the archers. So the archers just couldn't pick them off for RecoN, and he's using that camel archer essentially like a meter. He's not trying to do any kind of damage. Just the fact that it stays alive, stays behind everything, means he'll get some of that unease. But look at this, just with Hill and Dale in this feudal age situation that we have here 9 minutes into the game, we're back and forth on both of these hills within a minute apart. It's amazing to see.
Yeah, it's not the wall up and camp and boom. It's we have to keep making units, respecting the other players' unit production consistently. And DeMu behind this, due to his secondary TC, clicks up to culture win.
Yeah, this is a difficult thing for a French player to deal with, right? Because you made 13 knights, and obviously you needed to in feudal age, but they're very expensive units. You can see army value of 7,500. DeMu's been on 2 town centers, got a little bit of an economic lead, so he had the extra resources along with the fresh foodstuffs coming out of the Abbasid town center. Means he has a little bit of a food stockpile while continuously producing units. So he never took his foot off the gas in terms of making archers and spearmen, but still had the resources to preserve 1,800 of them and go up to go up to Culture Wing, excuse me. I really like DeMu's spot currently.
Yeah, and look at the resources that are just going to continuously accrue in the bank. He's still producing a little bit here, but he's going to be able to get so many upgrades, so many units out. That being said, RecoN matching up the Castle Age timing as well. The guild halls being dropped. He's doubling down on the walls on the west side of the base. And yeah, it seems like DeMu's Castle Age is exactly where ABBA wants to play it. But one thing I will say that RecoN is playing very, very well is he's playing the hill game well. He's playing, you're going to run out of resources on that hill. Yeah, we might be getting castle at the same time, but if you can't move out, if you can't get some of the resources long term, then it won't matter how many villagers you are ahead.
Yeah, I mean, even with both of these army masses that we have, they're big armies, 91 to 67. But I think either player just wants the other one to get baited. You know, I think a really good way to lose this game is to go in and try to take down villagers, you know, and get in there and try to do some of these like massive raids, sending your army full steam ahead because you're going to get chewed up and then you're going to lose map control as a result of it. So both of these players, they're continuing to pump military units, which is fantastic. But at the same time, they're just toying with each other. You know, it just seems like we have bait on the end of a fishing line and both of these guys are just not taking it.
Yeah, DeMu got all of his upgrades clicked immediately, composite bows, all the sort. RecoN, a little bit late on the veteran archers, so does not need to take this fight early, or else DeMu's archers, well, they already will have a better ability with composite bows, but will be even further outclassed.
Yeah, absolutely, and then we can see a difference in Castle Age compositions, right? DeMu adding some of those Castle Age units. He's adding Ghulams, which are very scary to deal with, and then adding crossbows as well. He notices that his upgrades may have came in just a skosh before RecoN, so he's going to push the initiative. He's going to take it a little bit. One camel archer getting particularly frisky and taking pot shots at some of those archers. Spearmen of the Castle Age variety actually going into that archer line, lost maybe some more spearmen than he might have liked to, but again, he's continuing pushing the initiative. If RecoN doesn't get these upgrades soon, this might spell game over.
Yeah, he's just waiting. He needs that ranged armor. And oh, is that just now composite bows? I thought it was already clicked. So this is now actually the timing to take the fight. The upgrade's going to come through midway through. Spearman mass is up front and forward. Not maybe as healthy as he'd like, but still very, very healthy. 15 is the number there. Knights haven't circled around to the backside. Archers trying to do everything they can. DeMu falling back a little bit. RecoN, though, he has taken tons of losses here, and it seems like DeMu, he has that army you don't have to micro. Just a move, and he's going to win the fight.
Yeah, I mean, with that many archers in that blob, he's got almost 50. That camel archer has stayed alive throughout the entirety of this fight. The archers didn't really have a chance to snipe it until right now because they were so focused on getting on the spearmen, right? And there were enough spearmen to keep that front line with those knights. The knights were injured enough where the composite bow archers were able to kind of pick them off. And now we see a military lead of 74 to 14.
Yeah, it just turned over so fast, and that was just because that fight went so well for DeMu. He continually pressed his advantage, pushed up, and now he has the map control. He drops a keep on the gold. He's inside of RecoN's base, and RecoN's been on all these pocket food resources that he no longer can be on.
Yeah, and that's super difficult for the French. We saw that in a previous game, in the previous series that we had. French getting their pocket ecos eliminated is super difficult. You can see there's some a little bit out forward. DeMu trying to get to that area, that western berries. There are a lot more Abbasid villagers, I will say, compared to those French villagers, so maybe he'll be able to spot it. But that big, massive red blob on the south side looks like it's not going to get stopped anytime soon. RecoN is trying to scramble around, trying to figure out what the best counter is for this, and does have a siege workshop, does have a mangonel. Not sure if one's going to be enough, though.
Yeah, I mean, this is just one of those that RecoN, he had a good game plan. He just couldn't find the damage he needed to and never really could take a fight on his terms. And it got to the point where DeMu knew once composite bows came through, that was an easy fight for him. RecoN's knights really weren't effective by any means, and he is in trouble, kind of scrambling all over the map, has villagers everywhere, but doesn't have the map control to have villagers all over.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think hopefully for RecoN's sake, maybe we'll see some of them back up. He's pulling that ranged mass right in front of that hometown center. All of the melee units are able to dive in on that mango. It does get one shot. Decent amount of archers end up going down, maybe about 7 or 8, but I'm not sure if it's enough. French adding those men-at-arms in those funny hats yet again, but a lot of them are going down rather quickly. There might be a couple crossbowmen in this mix. I think there's about 5 or 6 in there, which is just enough to take down those men-at-arms. DeMu has about 50 units by this starting town center. Nowhere to go. RecoN's just going to tap it. He doesn't want to do it anymore.
Yep, game number 1 going over to DeMu. Wasn't a ton of action for a while, kind of the standoff into just an obliteration of the side of RecoN as his military mass just went from a lot to a little real quick.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, with RecoN playing as the French, he's up against tough Civ. You know, DeMu is quite the Abbasid player. He's good with every civilization, but Abbasid is obviously included. The French, I mean, it's just difficult, right? Your best unit is operating at 85% strength, you know, especially in the context of that major fight. And you can see it based on the military count. Look at this graph. One takes a little bit of a dip, which is fine. The other one takes a swan dive.
A swan dive. Whenever you get to single digits at any point in time, whether it's Empire Wars or not, but we're talking about like 14 minutes of a game having single digits of either economy or military, you're going to lose. And that's exactly what happened. Went down to nothing and just wasn't going to be able to reboom. Was already lacking in economy and just didn't have the real kind of map control to do so. But enough about game number 1. We got game number 2 in store for us. It's Chinese versus the Mali on Dry Arabia.
Yeah, this one is going to be interesting for me too on the driest of Arabia. These are two civilizations that operate incredibly differently. I mean, you could say the Malians operate differently than any other civilization, but this one, I feel like both of these, the Civs, Malians, and Chinese, almost operate in the antithesis of one another, right? Because Malians are all about not necessarily getting the most villagers, but they get their passive income, right? The Chinese, on the other hand, is going to make a metric boatload of villagers in the Song Dynasty. So there's two ways, you know, there's two paths to the same destination. I guess we're just going to see in this game too if the Malian passive income can withstand some of the Chinese big villager booms.
And I see I Am Magic redeeming the Pesty rematch over here. I think it's been redeemed a couple times now, apparently, is what's said. So I think we got to get some messages over to Pesty and make that happen.
Yeah, it's been about 3 or 4 million points for all I know. I think it's actually 1 million, but you're right. For how many, I haven't seen Pesty pick up a mouse and keyboard yet.
You know, there's been some rumors that he has an account. He plays some AoE 4 games here and there. I haven't seen him personally myself on the ladder, but you know, maybe he's got a little bit of a secret account out there that he's grinding it out.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe he has 500 games somewhere. If he can manage EGC while spamming 500 ladder games, I'm gonna tip my cap, man. Like, you got better time management skills than I do.
I will say, I think that there's a Lord Petito. It might not be him, but there's a Lord Petito account out there. I think it's in the top 100. You know, so it may, you know, you can always have these players who like to support in different ways, try to act like they might be them.
Yeah, I remember I saw that on the AoE 4 World Leaderboard. Actually, I saw Lord Petito. I'm like, wow, he can really produce some content and have some good top 100 games. I was like, good for him. You know, all power to him.
But enough about all that. We are about to be jumping into this game 2 of our, second series. We are only in the second series of today, but that means that the series have been going the distance, that they have been exciting ones so far, and we're about to get another Dry Arabia match. This time it's Chinese versus Mali.
Yeah, this one's really going to be excited. Our overlay is initiating, and we are stalling no longer. DeMu in the 1-0 lead in the driver's seat of the series, playing as the Malians in the color red, spawning in the southeast portion of the driest of Arabias. His opponent for this one, game number 2, playing as the Chinese in the color blue. It is RecoN spawning on the north side of the map. And take a look at the Q's, Dabs. What do we got here? A little bit of Dark Age Spearman. I think this might actually be the meta for China. The China games that we have seen, we've seen some Dark Age Spearmen, some tower rushing going on. It seems to be they're the only Civ that can really pull this off.
Well, I think it's also, especially against a Civ like Mali, you have to stop that early. Like, Mali starts with a full pit mine, like, already ready to go. They're dropping the Mansa Quarry, so, like, if you think about them not doing any pressure and both players just going, hey, we're going to feudal, China's going to be behind in villager, or the same in villagers, which they're not used to. They always want to be ahead. They're going to be behind in passive resources by a lot. So I feel like it almost is a necessity to do something.
Yeah, and I think for this one, I mean, the last time we saw Chinese versus Mali, it was on King of the Hill, and that pit mine was rather forward, right? So for RecoN in this particular situation, might not necessarily stop something like a pit mine, but looking at his spawn, what do you think he has the potential to stop? I mean, I would think a Malian woodline is pretty important as well, but it looks like he is ignoring everything I say, and I would too, to be honest with you. Going to be putting that tower right next to the pit mine, but out of range of that hometown center. I like this placement a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the key here is the pit mine. You have to deny the pit mine. Denying the wood, yeah, it might be fine, but the pit mine is the key, and oh my, DeMu, he knows how big of a key it is. He is pulling the boys. Spears are on the way. Outpost is starting to be burnt. Villagers not pulled back yet. And the spears doing as much damage as they can, but there's so many villagers there. The shivs are out. One villager of RecoN's quite low and gets taken out. None of DeMu's have gone down yet. Chinese villager turns back around, wants to head back towards that outpost, but there's Donzo out already. Throughout all of this, DeMu was able to micro and create a couple Donzos, push back out, and the tower rush fully denied. All of those spears kind of worthless.
Yeah, I was honestly, I think you commentated that perfectly, because we watched the boys get pulled, right? And they're running around with their shivs. I'm like, this is so much idle time with all these villagers. They're just gonna chase this villager around to the ends of the earth, and ends up getting it down. But I think, you know, you get that little bit of idle time, which is fine. It's all about making sure that tower doesn't go up, right? That tower is left as just a small smattering of a blueprint that once was. Right, and now these spearmen just have to be used essentially as raiding units.
Yeah, they're kind of just gonna end up being thrown away. DeMu, he's already got a couple of those Donzos, which we just saw it there, can throw their spears from further away and just take more efficient trades. And oh my, we're already seeing some beef out on the field. The cattle are being produced, a ranch is out, and DeMu is starting to build up that passive eco even further without getting the pit mine denied.
Yeah, I mean, you get what RecoN was trying to do in Dark Age. You want to get a little bit of, you know, disarray in the Malian Empire before they start getting those passive income. But seeing red meat already make an appearance for the Malians might prove challenging for RecoN. But now they're going to go back. Both of these civs are going to be going back to what they do best economically, right? RecoN already has a second town center going up. Barbican is up. And I'm pretty sure with him, Imperial Academy, if it's not up already, is getting built. So he will be Song Dynasty with 2 town centers. Now we're just going to see which one's better.
Yeah, you know, timing, it sounds all good and well. Dark Age Spearman Rush into 2TC Song Dynasty at 4 minutes. It's great. It's crazy thinking about Empire Wars timings and numbers there. And it's just, it becomes online so fast. But just because he has 2TC Song, that's not where China finds their strength. It finds their strength 5 minutes after the 2TC Song, when they actually have their economy online, when they have that 30 villager count lead. Well, right now it's only 2, and DeMu's starting to build that next set of pit mines around. He's already got the cattle ranches starting, and so I feel like with this delay, DeMu is exactly where he wants to be.
Yeah, and that's why it was so important to get that tower down. Right, because DeMu, if that tower was still up, he would have been hell-bent and focused on trying to get that tower. He still would have been fixed inside of his base, right? But now he can go out to get that secondary pit mine. Now he can go out and put his cattle ranches in the nice area that he is to try to get the Grand Fulani Corral. And that tower outpost, that blueprint actually ends up getting null and void because of a cattle ranch there. So I feel like with DeMu, he had the adversity in the beginning, in the 1 or 2 minutes. He ended up being able to deal with it, and now we're gonna see if he can capitalize.
Yep. And you're already kind of starting to see the food start to accrue on up in the bank for him. That's due to those cattle ranches. And all he has to do is actually stop producing cattle for just a little bit of time, or has his fully cattle ranches filled, and then he's just going to click up to castle, and all those ranches become that much stronger. He's actually prepping the blacksmith, and those ranches, they're essentially full.
Yeah, I mean, DeMu did a good job of making sure there was enough beef in every ranch. You know, it's almost like every ville gets its own cow, you know, for how much it's got there. And now with him at 1,200 food, 600 gold, does click up with the Grand Fulani Corral, while RecoN wants to sit in feudal for a little while and continuously making feudal age units. There is one unit that might be difficult for the Malians to deal with, and those are those big Zugnu. He's got 14 of them. He's got 5 more in the queue. He's looking to do some damage to DeMu when he hits that castle age.
Yeah, and he's throwing those Donzo into the wood line, so kind of, again, throwaway units in a sense. He doesn't really care if he loses these, if he gets some damage on out, gets some idle time, because he's creating a better timing for himself with the Grand Fulani Corral, finishing his eco. Just doesn't really need the villagers, doesn't really need that kind of prowess to come online, and there we go.
Yeah, now that power does come online, those cows just a little bit beefier, right? There's so much hay in that corral that those cows are going to get a little bit more meat on their bones. But he's still, in terms of military production, is 27-5, right? He did throw away some of his units trying to get down some worker kills, and he did. He got about 4. Some of them will also get taken out. Those Musafati warriors don't have much in the way of ranged armor, if at all. So it's going to be very difficult for Zugnu to do something. I'll tell you what, these cattle ranches, very vulnerable to those big battering rams.
Yeah, and you can see DeMu starting to produce those javelin throwers, which are really good at countering out ranged units, but they do overkill quite a bit. And honestly, at this point, DeMu needs a lot out, because the cattle ranches are already starting to be rammed on down. It's hard to step up to try to take down the rams with that big of a range mass from RecoN.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, DeMu is just, this is the stereotypical, you know, they're still trying to get some kind of cow boom, but they're getting harassed over and over again. And we talked about how well DeMu did with the first amount of adversity that he had. Not sure if he's going to do too well at this stage of adversity, because he's doing a good job at killing the cattle. And you might think somebody should call PETA, but killing those cows is actually a really, really good idea, because he can't re-cattle farm in that area until he starts gathering from those and getting rid of them.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of food in those cows. Yes, they provide a ton of food, but he wants the cattle ranches. He wants the passive resources. He doesn't want to have to be gathering from those. And the rams still just proving so much work, has more than paid for itself, as 300 wood, or what is it? How many? 150 wood per cattle ranch, and it's already taken down 4 of them now. So that's a good amount of payoff there.
Yeah, and I mean, more cows are going to end up going down. There's more ground beef on the map than actual cows. So really good job for RecoN trying to make sure that DeMu doesn't get that passive income. I mean, he's still on about 800 food per minute, but he's using a lot of his own villagers that he would rather be using doing something else, getting gold, putting on their wood line or something like that. He would rather not have them on the food source. And now with the military lead that RecoN has, he's able to take down the secondary pit mine, just eliminating the passive income. And I think this is a lesson for a lot of people who struggle against Malians. You don't necessarily want to kill the villagers. You just want to kill these buildings, because these are the ones that are getting the resources.
Yeah, exactly. And just how DeMu was kind of creating timing for himself behind this, RecoN doing the exact same thing. While all this pressure is happening, he's able to move out on the map, take deer, take berries, take some other resources rather than having to transition to granaries, but also is building up his eco with that 2 TC song.
Yeah, that's a super good point, Dabs, because the granaries make you lose momentum, right? Because you're putting everybody on a wood line. You're trying to get all of your wood for granaries and farms and do all that kind of stuff. With, yes, it's going to pay off in 3 minutes, but RecoN wants this game to end in 3 minutes. Look at what he's doing. He's continuously putting on pressure. here. There's enough javelin throwers for DeMu of the veteran variety, so they will be able to do a good job against Zugdu. Even though they do fire bolts, it's still 1 damage. They don't have much in the way of health, so a lot of javelin throwers will be able to mop this up, and it looks like RecoN knows if he continues to push this in feudal, he doesn't necessarily have the units to give him that advantage. So he's just going to wait and try it again in castle.
Yeah, so DeMu, great job with the hold there. He ends up massing up enough of those javelin throwers, pushes the Chooks back, and now it's looking like he can be potentially back on the front foot again, starting to get those ranches back into play. He's been castle age for longer, get the pit mines back working for him again. RecoN, though, astronomical clock tower being built, and he has created that 32-ville lead. So as I kind of mentioned, this is where China starts to want to find themselves.
Yeah, and I mean it takes a while for China to do that, but once they do, oh my gosh, they are one with themselves after finding themselves. Let's be sure about that. When he goes up with the clock tower, he has some barracks that are already in on the map as of right now. I'm counting at least 5 on the screen that you can see. Churning out. As soon as that clock tower gets done, he immediately goes to his barracks and queues out those palace guards that are going to be sprinting at those javelin throwers.
Yeah, which honestly, DeMu, though, he's going to see that. He's already making the correct transition, though. He's starting to Sofa mass up. The first Sofa arrives, starts to burn down that outpost, and Sofa are pretty effective at burning down at taking down those palace guards. You can see that RecoN, though, triple Sprealed emplacements being invested into.
You know, for how much ranged armor the palace guards don't have, you know, because they do have that little bit less armor than a men-at-arms, the javelin throwers are doing a good job at eating them up. Imperial Official ends up going down for China, which is rather difficult for them, and they can sit under town centers and do, just because of the amount of ranged armor that the javelin throwers have, they can sit and try to pick off some villagers. RecoN trying to get that granary transition in the north. Javelin throwers had something to say about it, but it looks like there's enough palace guards and we'll be able to mop these up. That's the one downfall of these javelin throwers, Dabs. They're pretty slow. You get them in the harm's way, difficult for them to really escape.
Yeah, and you can kind of see now where RecoN, he's going to be the vulnerable one. He moved out to this deer that I was talking about earlier, which was fine when he had pressure, but now he's the one being pressured.
Yeah, and it's funny how much momentum you lose when going up in age, right? Because it's just how many resources you would rather spend on units. Just because of that, DeMu was able to, because of that hold, was able to kind of stabilize just a little bit back home, and now might have enough army to try to take this fight. He does have the military lead. He's at 32 to 22, using those sofas, just like you said before, with that very accurate change for him. Those sofas are going to be the way to take down those nest of bees. That nest of bees did a really good choke point, though. It stays alive, even though a couple of sofas were trying to take it down.
Yeah, should be able to get re-healed back up as well. And those nest of bees, they're the lifeline for China. They're that unit that I feel like always can just bring them out of the depths. If they're in a bad position, make a couple nest of bees, it can turn around real quick.
Oh, God, do they bring the pain, right? Just having, especially from a defensive standpoint, like you said, right next to the clock tower, being able to pump them out, having increased health, making sure that only 3 or 4 sofas don't end up taking it down. And now ReCon's got 2 beehives, trying to add a 3rd, and they are looking to sting something.
Man, this just becomes so hard. Like, China's great with like that one head-on engagement with spears, with chooks, with crossbows, nested bees mainly. And Mali wants to kind of be that more raiding party with the sofa, can kind of pull them around and not have to take this engagement. But ooh, no. As we say that, the sofa, they spin around, they run into some spears, they're on top of some villagers. Nested bees getting some shots out onto the javelin throwers, and I feel like DeMu kind of throwing away some of this military mass.
Yeah, especially in the form of those sofas. You know, I mean, they did get some worker kills, which is all well and good. DeMu has about 24 worker kills, but RecoN still has a 30-ville lead, and I think some of those raids are going to help him, you know, trying to make sure China doesn't get completely out of control. And I also really like ReCon's army composition change. Instead of more palace guards, now you can see that he stopped pretty much completely and going more spearmen because he sees the sofas.
Yeah, just kind of, again, all he wants to make sure to do is keep those nested bees alive, which the spears are way better doing that than those palace guards. The sofa not really able to dive onto the spots they want to.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, spearmen, when you have that siege superiority, you have spearmen around the siege just to make sure they don't get sniped down, and it's going to force DeMu to do something like make Springles to try to take those down. So very difficult for them to do. Now, military count for them has kind of normalized, and it looks like DeMu is going away from Sofas, adding more Musafati, but there's no palace guards to be seen to really chomp at.
Oh, but Imperial official gets chomped down, gets taken down quite quickly, and Sofa's still just gonna run right past there. DeMu's just at a couple different spots on this map with the Sofa. Seems like RecoN could really use just some wall segments here to make those Sofas' job that much harder to get to the locations they want to.
Yeah, and I really like what you said before with some of those Sofas taking down the gold mine up north. This is what the Malians want to do, right? It's not necessarily just taking a huge military and driving it down to your hometown center. He's using those Sofas for raiding purpose and continuing to take down villagers. You're right with RecoN not having walls, and we're seeing how difficult it is for RecoN to do this because he's having spearmen to try to chase these Sofas. Yeah, he gets a couple of them eventually, but there's worker kills that take an account for that. That worker count keeps, the worker kill count, excuse me, keeps going up. We're down to 35, whereas RecoN hasn't lost a single one.
Yeah, and DeMu lost a single one, but yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're all good. That's one where, like right now, the 30 vil count lead doesn't matter. Look at the income in the bank. DeMu, more food. DeMu, more gold. Yeah, he's not getting any stone. He's not getting the wood, but all he cares about is food and gold.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing he needs to make some of these units. And now Musafati trying to get stealthy, trying to take down some of these nested bees. It looks like one ends up going down, trying to get on to the second one. Second one ends up getting popped, but there's still more. 3 more beehives. Another one ends up getting taken down. These spearmen aren't going to do much in terms of a DPS unit against Musafati. They will do well against Sofas, but you can see how well the Musafati are getting in on those nest of bees. That's a pretty good fight for DeMu, to be honest.
Yeah, took down every single nest of bees except for one left standing at just a little bit of health, but RecoN still feels okay. He's held. He's going to start pushing back, and it looks like he might try to start finding some damage on the other side, maybe focusing on some of those other gold veins, some of the pit mines, and really wants to actually start turning it back to DeMu.
Yeah, and I think he's doing the best he can with
the
things the Chinese could do. Here's a keep. Looks like only about 6 or 7 Chinese villagers are trying to get that up on the eastern side. They might end up having to fall back in a different direction, but DeMu, no A move. Those villagers, they're going to be able to get that keep up if he doesn't do something about it.
Nah, he made the realization. The shivs have been pulled. The 6 vills turning to nothing here in just a second, but reinforcements were on the way. He didn't want to just build it with 6. He wanted to build it with about 15, but by the time the other ones arrived, there's already Sofa there. RecoN, look! RecoN! Oh, he's distracted. Other parts of the map, this keep, it will be fully denied. And not only that, it looks like the army fight in the middle not going the best way. RecoN, javelin throwers, archers still on the backside. The one nest of bees finally gets taken down, and DeMu probably has a sigh of relief after taking that.
Yeah, I mean, for 2 of those massive points of interest with that keep on the 3rd pit mine and this fight with taking down
more vills.
He's trying to get the keep up again.
It's
I
gonna
think
get
with
up.
this
It's
many
gonna
he'll
up.
go up, but at what cost, Dabs?
I mean, at least he starts to deny the gold, the pit mine, but again, still losing this fight in the middle. I feel like the main army mass starting to fall for RecoN finally, as he had equalized the numbers even with the siege and having to head back to his home base.
Yeah, I mean, those spearmen, I mean, they did the best they could to protect the siege, but I don't think protecting them against Musafati is what he was really hoping for, right? He was going for trying to protect them against the Sofas. He lost a lot. Those nest of bees, even though they're coming out of the clock tower, and they are good units, they're not the cheapest units in the world. Whereas spearman isn't going to create that DPS that you need to take down that javelin thrower mass. So getting those nest of bees down, DeMu knows it's that #1 priority in these big fights, and man, he is methodically taking down those bees.
Yeah, it's only spears. He's at 40 spears right now, going up against 36 jabs. He's got 18 of the Musafati, and this isn't looking too great for RecoN. Just throws away another nest of bees for nothing.
Yeah, again, I mean, you can't be doing that, you know, especially when in these particular fights with RecoN, I mean, he's going to need about 6 or 7 nest of bees to really take down a lot of this javelin thrower mass. And yeah, it's a really good unit against the Malians, but if they're not getting off a lot of stings, it's going to be rather difficult. And now DeMu, he does have, with that economy, you can see he's got about 2,000 food per minute. He's got almost a little bit over 1,500 gold per minute. He can just continuously pump out units, and Mali, they don't have to spend a lot of time making villagers, so their military count is 100 to RecoN's 54.
Yeah, you get overrun all of a sudden when you're playing against Mali. You cannot keep up with their numbers. This keep still proving to be annoying, but the secondary gold vein still has the ability to be mined by DeMu, so no real worry there. And DeMu can actually split his army and probably take 2 different fights and win both.
Yeah, and it looks like that's what he's doing. I mean, between this wood line, it looks like he split them up. Now they're starting to congregate a little bit together. I think, to be honest, I think he can pick one of either approaches and he would be okay, right? Either if he wants to make a big Malian death ball, or if he wants to split them up in 2 different areas, maybe a raiding party or otherwise. You know, regardless, I think he would be okay in doing it. But now DeMu just about pop capped. RecoN is pop capped as well, but again with about 35 more villagers, only making spearmen though. I mean, the nest of bees are taking hits on Sofa that are trying to raid, but what do you think about this like spearmen only comp?
I get it against the javs, like, because javelins, they overkill a lot, so they actually trade somewhat well against the javs, but it doesn't make sense in the grander scheme of things in my eyes. I really would like to see some other units in play, ranged units for sure, being able to just snipe down those Musafati, those things of that sort. A couple of those Sofa did split around, and it looks like a Great Wall Gatehouse is about to be dropped next to RecoN's granaries, but this is as the Fort of the Huntress is already starting to be built now by DeMu, and he's the one with max population. I guess RecoN is too, but the military is the scary part.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the military count is going to continue to be higher on the Malian side just because of the villagers or lack thereof that they need, and he actually spends 30 to go ahead and build the Fort of the Huntress, and that's kind of the difference. If RecoN does want to go Imperial, which I would assume he would after he sees the Fort of the Huntress going up, he probably has to put it in a rather defensive area, something that China, if they had the choice, they'd rather not.
Yeah, I believe he's going to focus on probably protecting his granaries, which is definitely a priority, but he's got a lot of other things he needs to protect other than just his granaries.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's pretty much every line, you know, wood line, granary, gold vein, all that kind of stuff is just getting raided. You saw all of those villagers that were trying to get on stone for RecoN, and they ended up going down, totaling 68 worker kills now. So you got to think if all of those were alive, or if most of them would be protected, how good of a spot that RecoN might be in comparison to what he is now. But we'll be going with the Gatewall Gatehouse. That keep ended up going down on the east side. He's starting to take down some of these outposts. He's just clawing up and up to that area where Chinese, you can get a real good smothering effect.
Yeah, and look at all of the upgrades coming in for DeMu. He hit Imperial, and he had so many resources in the bank. He's actually able to get a lot of these upgrades. I feel like a lot of time you hit Imp, and you can't really get a ton of upgrades. You got to kind of prioritize, choose 1 or 2 at a time. But RecoN, he's actually not too far away from being able to do the same, but it seems like all he has access to is the 5,000 gold that he has in the bank.
Yeah, and you would think by going up to Imperial Age, you know, a lot of those techs that you were talking about are pretty gold heavy. You know, a lot of them are 700 gold each to try to get up. So it really works well with the Malians because of that pit mine and how much gold they end up accumulating over time. RecoN trying to get those stone walls up might be just a little too late. We have a lot of those Musafati warriors that are now of the elite variety, and man, can they do some damage against villagers.
Yeah, they're just kind of running past those nested bees firing out from the gatehouse. The gatehouse is on the granaries as expected, but it takes a little bit of time. Oh, actually, it doesn't take any time to kill those. Okay.
Those Musafati, I mean, they're pretty high powered, especially against villagers that don't have any armor, but they don't have much in the way of health, right? So I think he might need a little bit more Musafati in order to raid this area, but continuing to stay high on the military count, continuing to take down worker kills. I think we're gonna hit triple digits in terms of worker kills if DeMu keeps this up, guaranteed.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that's just what China, like, they're fine with sacrificing their villagers if it means they're able to stabilize, but they need to be able to stabilize. RecoN's been trying to do that with the spear mass, but I don't know if spears is the only thing he can use to do that.
Yeah, I mean, he does have a lot of them. I understand, and you know, based on the explanation you gave, really understand why he's doing that. But you can even see how long it takes down a simple Musafati warrior with elite spearmen. And one of the things that we have not mentioned for the Malians, especially when we get to Imperial, is the fact that they can make culverins. So having culverins, they're going to be really good against those nest of beans. The Malians, we do know how good they are at traders. I think with all of those villagers on the eastern side, might we see some markets going up?
I think that is exactly what Vodka was just prepping us with, that DeMu, he's making that transition into a trade boom behind this, so we'll have a ton more gold eco coming in because there's not much more gold on the map.
No, and I mean, that's why the passive income for the pit mines is so important, right? It's going to force RecoN to do something like trading if he wants to keep up the siege production. I mean, for spearmen, not so much, but definitely for the siege. So we'll see if he's able to get a little bit of map control in order to do that. It's going to be difficult for him to get that based on where the neutral trading post spawns are. And it looks like DeMu trying to get to some of these pocket ecos from China. He had a lot of villagers over there on the western side. It looks like that's the only real relatively safe goal that might be a really good point of interest for DeMu going forward.
Yeah, I mean, DeMu's definitely diving in on that western side. Half of RecoN's eco is over there other than the Granners, it seems like. Yeah, he was getting a lot of wood from over there since his main two wood lines were being focused down quite a bit. But it does seem like RecoN is starting to move out with this spearman mass. He finds a unlucky culverin. Good old pickup for him, as I know you had just mentioned how strong those culverins are that Mali has access to.
Yeah, and I mean, there are 1,000 resources total, right? So just losing 1,000 resources like that, Culverin's trying to get with the front army. It's trying to wheel and deal, trying to take down some of those springlets, and Nest of Bees won't be able to do that in its very short lifespan. We're on the other side. DeMu knows where RecoN's army is, right? Because it took down the Culverin. It's trying to go into DeMu's base, trying to get some villager kills, maybe get rid of some of these cattle ranches and stuff like that. You see the Nest of Bees just raining their own special version of fireworks on that hometown center, where DeMu's like, you know what? Do what you gotta do. I'm gonna go to your base, take down your villagers.
Yeah, and so we're gonna start seeing this little bit of a base trade, which I will say RecoN has the Great Wall Gatehouse to support him a little bit, and it isn't the easiest to take down when you don't have any siege over there, so will be quite costly for DeMu on this side, and he's gonna be losing a lot.
Yeah, and you can see that a lot of the reinforcements for DeMu, now that some of these units are going down because of the Great Wall Gatehouse, some of them are popping out back home on the southern side, but I think RecoN might have just way too many units. You see raids going on at either side. The western wood wall, the cattle ranches are starting to get targeted. The cows are getting targeted. Multiple species are going down on the Malian base.
Look at those villagers. I don't know if they're pulled to go try to burn the Nest of Bees or if he just clicked the garrison key, because they don't want to be garrisoned. There's not many spots to go to.
Yeah, there really isn't a lot of spots to go to. You're absolutely right. And these villagers for the Malians, I mean, yeah, DeMu's getting a really good worker kill count. You know, Chinese, they're down to about 87 villagers, but all of that passive income is about to go down. That Grand Fulani corral is burning. That hay is on fire inside that corral. That's 2 landmarks down that we can see. But if RecoN's going for a landmark snipe, there's one particularly dangerous landmark on the north side, and that's the Fort of the Huntress. We'll see if RecoN's able to take it down.
I mean, at this point, though, like, how can DeMu hold this? He threw away his whole military and didn't get the trades he needed. Yes, he has some passive income, but not a ton anymore. He's running out of gold, running low on gold, and it is the Fort of the Huntress being burnt down too. RecoN's just trying to end this now, and I think he can. DeMu cannot hold this. 3 landmarks are down, the last one's being burnt, and where's DeMu's army? It's on fire, and it's over. RecoN, against all odds, held the push, held the massive ball all over the map, and takes game number 2.
Unbelievable. What an unbelievable game. I didn't think that, 25 to 30 minutes into this game, we were going to see a base trade, a landmark snipe. We were talking about, the the Great Wall Gatehouse, protecting those granaries, trying to make sure the Chinese didn't get too many villager kills. And I think, to be honest, that was the MVP of this game. I think there was a reason why DeMu's army wasn't able to do the same thing. I really think it saved the game.
Yeah, and that Great Wall Gatehouse, it spits out so much damage. That's just one of those landmarks. It's almost similar to like when the Red Palace goes up, where you're like, just run away. Don't fight under it. You're gonna lose. That's how the Great Wall Gatehouse is, and we didn't get to see exactly what it did, but it shredded.
No, absolutely. Just because we didn't get the visual, you saw the graph, right? You saw how many it went down. And I think that was the first time in the game, probably before the first 2 minutes, if we're excluding that part, it was probably the first time in the game where DeMu didn't have more military than RecoN. So turns out that Spearman composition ended up paying off. RecoN tying this thing up 1-1 for each guy's a monumental game 3. It really sets the tone for the rest of the series. We're going to be on Canal yet again.
And this is our first English game of the day, which I would say is surprising to see, which I have no complaints about not seeing English for a bit of time. I feel like we see them a lot. They have a similar gameplay style, but Canal, it makes sense that English gets picked. Very, very strong on this map. I'm used to thinking about the men-at-arms into the longbow mass, and the longbows are so good at just controlling that full central middle canal. But auto is nothing to joke around about either.
Yeah, I'm taking lessons of the previous series when I talked about Delhi's fishing boats at arm's length, probably longer than I should have. But so for the English, yeah, their Vanguard men-at-arms are really good in Dark Age, against things like Ottoman Spearmen. But we see Dark Age is 40 seconds, man. How much impact are they actually going to make?
Yeah, it's one that the men-at-arms aren't going to be it. It's going to be longbows, and it's the scary part though is I feel like against English you don't want to dive into their base. You don't want to pressure them because they're English. They have these inherent bonuses, but you have to keep that longbow number low, or else it just becomes this unstoppable ball that you're well, what counters it? I can't build anything. So you kind of find this struggle to do it. So that's kind of where I feel like the longbows and English on this map specifically though can just be the strength where we might not even see a ton of other units.
Yeah, we could just see a longbow centric. They do even a good job just because of the increased range damage that they have compared to a normal archer. Even if Ottomans are trying to make Sapahis out of military schools, right? You still could, if you have that critical mass, you still might be able to pick them off. But one of the things I feel like we're forgetting about English, especially when we get into the feudal age, is admiralty, right? For the English in feudal age, you're able to increase the range of your military ships by 1. So if English has the opportunity to win the water, and they have their galleys and hulks, we noticed on that first series how long that canal extends, how close the end of that canal is going to be to the Ottoman base. That +1 range, even though it's just +1, maybe it wreaks a little bit more havoc than we're giving it credit for.
It's an expensive upgrade. I'd be shocked to see them get that. I think priorities would be elsewhere. But all that being said, I feel like Canal's just an interesting map to think about in Empire's War especially, because we've talked about water a lot. Well, the food's kind of key, because if you take the water out of this map and see how much food is actually there's not a lot of it. And so that's another one where English kind of has a little bit of a benefit being able to have some of those farms if they can get them set up, but only time will end up telling there. In the meantime, I know we got just about 20 seconds or so. Thanks for all the support we've been getting so far today, but if you want to continue that support on up, obviously I think the link just got sent a little bit ago, but the Patreon over there is a great way to support the Age of Empires 4 scene throughout this year and going on forward to next year, the next events and everything going forward. So if you are interested, click that !! Patreon button and check and see the different kind of support goals and choices you can make. But now we're going to be jumping into game 3 of our second series of the day.
Man, Man, I'll tell you what, this game 3, I think it's put up or shut up time. Let me tell you, giving a 2-1 advantage in a best of 5 is really pivotal. It helps set your momentum going into game 4 for perhaps a 3-1. It just means you only got to win one of the next 2, for winning this one. So our overlay is initiating. It's usually the cue to,
Yeah, it'll get set up in here in a little bit. I see some great ideas from the chat. Support goal for Tim Mustache. Now we're talking here. I've seen Tim try to rock a mustache before, and it's enjoyable for us viewers here.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. When you have a face of a 12-year-old, difficult to pull off the mustache. I'll tell you that.
Oh, you can't knock it till you try it, though. You gotta let Twitch chat give their opinion because they're always right, and so if they like it, you got to do it.
Oh, that's so true. Those Twitch chat, they're definitely number 1 player in my heart. So enough compliments out of Twitch chat. They just get too many already, let me tell you. Going into game 3 here on Canal, we have RecoN playing in the color blue, spawning on the eastern side of this canal, playing as the English DeMu. His opponent playing as the Ottoman Empire in the color red, spawning on the western side. Gotta get that blacksmith with Empire Wars. Gonna get that military school, so he's gonna be able to start Spearman at a moment's notice. RecoN 35 seconds in. I can't even do the introductions, Dabs, and we're already seeing a council hall.
Yeah, and we were talking about it, just how you were talking about the deli fishing chips. I totally forgot English starts with the full set of farms. So RecoN's going to be good for a good while when it comes to food in this game. And like I mentioned, look at the secondary food resources on the map if you don't get a fishing eco. You have your initial berries, and then you have 2 berries and a deer. And a boar, I guess. That's it. There's not a ton of food to actually be gathered and had. So very, very key ability to actually either take water or deny water if your opponent is.
Yeah, it's a really interesting map design. It makes you focus on water. It makes you go out, to those areas. So you can't just stay fixed to that little end of the canal. But we have a little difference in the Ottoman Empire. We usually see the twin minaret, but now we're seeing the Sultan Hani trade network. What do you think about this choice?
I just kind of put a big focus on food on this map, and I think having safe food is always key. What the trade network does is, obviously, if you're able to get the map control, if you're able to get the front foot up, you can start trade booming here, and there's 2 markets in either corner. It's hard to actually focus and deny that up. So I still would prefer the twin minaret, but we'll see if I can just be put up or and shut up real quick here with DeMu's gameplay.
Yeah, I mean, we can understand the thought process, right? I mean, if he's going for the dock, that's where he's going to get his food. He doesn't really care about twin minaret and getting those berries in that safe food spot or whatever. And just like you said, with the trade post being on the north and south side, it just means if one site ends up getting compromised, you can always just go to the other one, or you can house those traders in there for that little bit of gold trickle. Now, for having 2 of those trade posts there and having a potential to have 2 routes, I feel like is going to be difficult for English, because you and I both know the English army mass, even though they're able to get a good amount of it really early, as you see 6 longbowmen already for RecoN, they're slow. So getting 2 trade routes and trying to take down both of them might be difficult.
Absolutely, but one thing that this English mass is good at doing, it's good at forcing your opponent to react to it. Wow, that scout barely gets out with its life. But you can see villagers coming up with this longbow mass. There's actually a couple spears that have already popped out as well, so there will be support if there's those Sipahi coming soon. And the longbows are going to be great at denying any of these docks from actually being utilized as they should. They can snipe down those galleys pretty well, kiting in and out. They can snipe down fishing ships very well. Villagers that move forward are obviously going to be dead too. So we'll see how effective RecoN can utilize these.
Yeah, we're going to see these power of the longbowmen just based on the width of the canal, right? They don't even necessarily need to be on the shore in order to take down a lot of these. They do have more range than those arrow ships, those dhows that the Ottoman Empire can make. So it's really, really difficult for them to do anything about it. Now, the dhows will get a couple arrow shots in, but RecoN also putting up that outpost, getting that sweet, sweet network of castles bonus.
gosh.
4 minutes in, we got an MIA. What is going on? Welcome to Empire Wars, ladies and gentlemen.
I wasn't even looking at the resources in the bank. I wasn't even thinking at all. And oh my, the MIA is getting finished so fast. This is absurd how quick this can be. And you know what's one way to deny a trade route and making it more one-dimensional is walling off the other side.
Yeah, I really like this play, you know, because we talked about the mobility of the English, right? But you can just put a stationary structure. Just put a big, fat, old palisade wall over there on the north side, and you're going to be just fine. But the Ottomans on the other side now, with a little bit of tech advantage with Castle Age and the MIA right next to that blacksmith, we'll be able to get a mangonel pretty quickly. I'm going to put the thought out there, but I don't necessarily see it happening. We're going to see a really soon imp.
Why did I knew when we saw Fast Castle that Fast Imp was going to be the immediate thought?
Oh, of course.
But no, I think going Fast Imp against English is just asking yourself to die. They're just going to drop an outpost on your gold, and you're never going to actually age up. Might actually still see that anyways, as we can see where RecoN is just starting to mass up all of his units, starting to burn down military schools, focusing on all the production. As production pops out, as those barracks have men-at-arms come out, the longbow should at least be able to get a couple shots in on them. And there's the ram already being dropped.
Yeah, you are right about those longbowmen. They're able to sprinkle on those men-at-arms just a little bit, but I really like RecoN's positioning right now.
Oh,
being on
pathing.
the south side.
Oh my gosh.
Oh. So frustrating for RecoN. You lose a couple longbowmen that you don't necessarily should have, but his spot on the south side makes it really great for him because he's right on top of the production. He's outside of the TC fire, going to put an outpost there as well. So he's trying to get that men-at-arms mass to stop this RecoN, this early English feudal aggression. But being able to ram those down before he gets that is going to be huge.
And look at DeMu trying to make the sneaky maneuver out around to the gold. He has a Grand Galley coming out to potentially protect this, as that range is massive. This is... You talked about Admiralty. Well, you didn't talk about the Grand Galley over here. RecoN... Go ahead.
I did not talk about the Grand Galley, and that thing is a naval Tonka truck. Look at that thing. It's going to be able to, I'm pretty sure it does have the range. It's going to keep RecoN stabilized on that south side. I don't think he's going to want to move up north.
Is it not able to move out any further?
Oh, no.
One thing I will say is RecoN is a half an inch away with his scout from scouting out that gold. And actually denying the gold would be so, so crucial here because DeMu, that little bit of gold that he's bringing in is literally his lifeline. It's his savior. He's gotten up to 7 men-at-arms, and the longbow mass that RecoN has, yeah, they can try to kite out that men-at-arms mass, but those men-at-arms will eventually win, especially with the mangonel.
Yeah, for how many are there? You know, you just needed about 7 or 8 of those men-at-arms, and it looks like he had 8, and it made enough for RecoN to kind of go with his tail between his legs back down to the southeast, and he might be thinking about Castle Age. But can we just talk about that ram and how it completely evaporated?
I don't know how much base damage that Grand Galley did to the ram, but it seemed like it has bonus versus ram specifically.
It looks like it. It looks like that ram was made of paper. Oh my god, that thing just took a cannonballs to the dome. But now that RecoN's starting to macro a little bit for Castle Age, now we know that DeMu has water, right? So he's going to have that increase in food production, but RecoN going to be going up with the King's Palace. Maybe a second town center might be able to help him out as we go later into the game.
Yeah, and I mean, even though DeMu hit this really early castle timing, he hasn't done anything with it. He doesn't have relics in the bank. He doesn't have like a huge amount of like military that's actually scary. Like, yeah, 11 men-at-arms is somewhat scary, but once English finishes castle, they can double the council hall can produce crossbows. Their TCs can fire down quite a bit, and they already have ranged armor base on, so at least they will be taking a little bit of damage here, and upgrades can easily be clicked pretty quickly for RecoN.
Yeah, that was a really good point for Castle Age for DeMu. It wasn't necessarily to get that tech advantage. It was more so for survivability. And we're going to see Longbowmen. It looks like we got a group of about 15, 16 of them here trying to take down those men-at-arms. I mean, you get enough volleys and maybe behind an outpost, it might be able to help them out. But those men-at-arms, I mean, they are slow, somewhat near the Longbowmen.
The Grand Galley! Oh my god!
That poor villager. Oh my god, that thing just disintegrated.
The poor everything. I think RecoN might, like, I haven't ever seen a Grand Galley, like, just get parked front forward like this. But it looks like the council hall can't really be utilized. The villagers that are coming out are just getting one shot. Every single one.
Oh, this is devastating. It really is a joy to watch, though. To see every individual villager just get shelled by a Grand Galley. But when the villagers aren't going there, because RecoN obviously going to change his waypoint eventually, he's still going to be able to hit that council hall. And that's going to be a huge problem for RecoN, especially because he probably was relying on that council hall to make a lot of crossbowmen quite quickly.
Yeah, Grand Galley still just doing that damage to the council hall like you were saying, but this time there's men-at-arms support. And I thought that there was going to be a bigger crossbow mass. I thought there was going to be a bigger ability to hold here, but I think DeMu's timing with this and with everything he has, I think this might just end it.
Yeah, I think so too, because how is he going to get this mass and be okay? You know, I mean, he only has 2 crossbowmen. He's got another one in the queue. The farms are pretty much the only thing that's giving him any sort of food income. I think the King's Palace was more by that wood line, you know, so it didn't really have an area for him to do that. Villagers are going to start going down. There's actually a barracks that's in range of that Grand Galley as well. You can see it getting broadsided, essentially. A lot of idle time for RecoN, and I think if DeMu can keep pushing men-at-arms in this direction, I'm not really sure if RecoN can sustain the mass to deal with it.
Yeah, the longbow number, it's still staying healthy. That was that same little longbow mass that was able to pull all the way back. The crossbows are up to 4. We'll probably have double-digit crossbows here in just a little bit. But how's RecoN going to break out of his canal? Like, I feel like he's just split off from the King's Palace and where his home TC is. And I feel like if I'm DeMu, I just continue that split and focus in on one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like as long as you're putting pressure in an area, you know, to me, I feel like it doesn't really matter which area. Maybe the King's Palace might be a little bit easier to deal with just because that hometown center and that the massive amount of arrows you can actually fire from it.
Springled comes up to deal with the Grand Galley.
Now, is the Springled in range of the galley?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know the exact range of a Grand Galley, but I think the Springled outranges the Grand Galley. I think it's kind of how like longbows. I think it's kind of how like longbows will outrange like the military ships, but I think like the Grand Galley can like pull back a little bit and then maybe bait it in. But doesn't matter. Too late. The Grand Galley goes down. The archer ship needs to pull back, and I just said, how's RecoN going to break out of this? And Springleds, that was the answer. And Springleds, they're not just going to be utilized for the Grand Galley. The MIA's been pumping this whole time, so RecoN was needing those Springleds anyways. Ooh.
Yeah, that was a really good unit to make, right? Not only for the Grand Galley, but for the Mangonels. To Ottomans, though, DeMu going for that second town center because he knows about King's Palace, right? So RecoN will never get that kind of villager advantage while DeMu's the only one on the water. So I want to say for an economic standpoint, I think the point goes to DeMu here.
Oh, yeah, definitely when you think about all of the economic bonuses that he has passively with military schools. And the MIA. He's saving so many resources per minute in that regards. Yeah, English has their farms starting to work. I saw RecoN get his second set of farms in, so the food will be very, very nice, but that's where DeMu just makes up for it with his fishing.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And he doesn't need to put his villagers, I mean, we talk about why getting fishing is so important, right? RecoN has to make these farm fields, which even though they're half price, it's still a wood tax, you know, for trying to get some of that food, or DeMu doesn't necessarily have to do that. Fishing economy might be in a little trouble, though. RecoN's starting to break out on that eastern side, and those longbowmen, they're still going to be able to pepper down those boats.
Yeah, DeMu starting to mass up more men-at-arms and, well, away from the men-at-arms into Sipahi now. He's got 16 men-at-arms as just kind of that frontline tank mass, and the Sipahi are going to just be great at killing all of the ranged units from RecoN, as it's really amazing how much damage Sipahi can actually get out with that extra little bit of range.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really nice for Sipahi because it's kind of like how the Abbasid are with spearmen, right? They can kind of like stack on top of each other, but they still have enough range to take them down. It makes them a little less clunky, which you might think, well, you know, the range of 0.25 increase or whatever, it's not really that big of a deal. But once you watch them wreak havoc on a longbowman mass, you start to get it.
Oh, it's horsemen. They're very, just how you were kind of just mentioned, the clunkiness of it. A lot of times, like you'll feel like you have to get this like full surround, and then by the time you do, like half of your horsemen are already dead. With Sipahi, you can just get so much more damage out throughout. So very, very great unit to end up massing up, especially against English. And look at these weird walls coming in from RecoN.
Yeah, I mean, he's walling up something. You know, I mean, I mean, for both of these trading posts, I guess that's nice. You know, to wall this area and to make sure his King's Palace is at least not raidable or difficult to raid. But it looks like DeMu not necessarily going for a raiding strategy. He's just going for, you know, that Ottoman death ball strategy.
You mean the Imperial strategy?
Yeah, that too. I see the macro. I love it.
Yeah, so once these walls are coming down, he has a huge mass already as far as the defense. Like, there's no way RecoN's pushing forwards, first off, you're English, with one ball. It's not like you have a mobile army, into the mass that DeMu has. He's got 4 mangonels, about to be 5 mangonels, that you can just say goodbye to your ranged mass, and even men-at-arms take a good amount of damage from a bunch of rocks falling from the sky.
And it's only going to get worse, right? Instead of a bunch of small rocks falling from the sky, once that Imperial or the Istanbul Observatory actually gets built, it's going to be one giant rock that's line driving to your dome.
Yeah, exactly. It's so weird how fast Imp as auto has just become so much more of like an actual meta build and not just a meme build. And you know, I'm here for it. DeMu, he's Imperial Age. They're on the same footing on the eco, and DeMu's going to be way ahead when it comes to the military and the tech here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it felt like throughout the entirety of this game that RecoN was on the back foot. He had that little bit of aggression on the south end of DeMu's base on that little crux of that canal, but other than that, that was evaporated pretty quickly just because of how many men-at-arms that DeMu made. He's really being able to shell up. He's really being able to stabilize all of his economy, continuing to stay on fishing, and he's still on his side of the canal actually when it comes to that fishing too. So he's got a lot of fish still left in the tank, and he's got a lot of resources left to start making a lot of these units.
Yep. RecoN, he's going to be looking to match that Imperial Age as well, as resources in the bank are there, and where's going to be the landmark drop?
Yeah, that's a good question too. It looks like with that Berkshire, he puts it a little bit more forward. It looks like it's more western, right next to a stone mine over there, which is nice because, you know, the Berkshire, because of the range that it has, it really could. It could shoot from a different area code. So if there's any kind of big battle that happens within 15 tiles of that Berkshire, it's going to be able to help you out.
Yep, Sapahi finally looking to head on to the other side of the map, do some raiding, not let English just chill and do everything they want to. Grand Galley yet again moving forward. The Springolds, though, making quick work of it, as I think RecoN learned from the first one that he needs to deal with that rather quickly.
Yeah, hopefully that Council Hall got some repairs. And what's nice about these Springolds, yeah, he took down the Grand Galley, but all of that fishing economy is right there, ripe for Springolds to take. So probably that fishing eco will end up going down. It feels like now, with DeMu's siege superiority, with the amount of units that he has, and I know we talk about having God vision for casters, but it really feels like this is his time. This is his time to really set the ground moving.
Yeah, I mean, these Springolds, they're making quick work of all of those fishing boats, and DeMu, you can see he wants to do something. He just doesn't know what to do. He doesn't have the vision and knowledge of everything that is going on the other side, and RecoN is fine with this kind of turtling strategy, but how long is he going to be fine with it? Because soon you're going to have multiple great bombards knocking on your doorstep.
Yeah, and I mean, for the amount of farms that RecoN has, I think he has 4 mills full that I can see on the map, either 4 or 5. Is that going to be enough for enclosures, you know, to continuously produce for gold resources? Maybe not. Are men-at-arms what you want to be going for as English going up against Ottomans with things like those giant bombards that can really take down men-at-arms rather quickly? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. It kind of feels weird. Like, we question the composition that RecoN was doing a lot the game prior with only spears, and this one it's basically only men-at-arms, and those men-at-arms, they could technically just try to like right-click the great bombards, but we've seen pathing in this game and how inefficient it can be at times.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we just saw it about 10 minutes ago, right? For the English now that we're Imperial Age, we're watching the Ottoman death ball matriculate.
Oh, look
and
at
go
this
over to the
Sapahi.
eastern side. This is, oh man, I can't wait to see this death ball in action.
I love seeing those Imperial Age Sipahi. Just such a cool unit, such a strong unit. And DeMu, he is headed past the middle point of this map, so he seems like he is getting ready for this death ball to finally be at the point where it is pushing forward. And there's the Great Bombards. That is what he wanted. That is what he needed.
Yeah, having two of those, especially against English.
Springles,
Taking
hello.
that Keep, right?
Springles,
Oh,
hello.
Springles.
Springles. Oh, he needed those so bad.
That was a terrible loss for him, especially with all the mangonels and Great Bombards and all that Ottoman Imperial siege coming at you. The mangonels are going to make, and the Bombard going to make quick work of that outpost. So RecoN, I mean, for the English, they rely on their keeps to do things like network of citadels and have that bonus for them. If he's able to take down those quickly and then engage, it could spell an Ottoman win.
Yeah, and right where he is engaging, it's where that King's Palace is. It's where, like, the heart of RecoN's eco is. He's made this expansion outside of the canal because you're forced to get out once that, you know, initial wood line runs out. But DeMu is going to punish this spot and punish it heavily. Siege going to be able to obliterate everything in the path, and the ball he has is not easily able to be taken down.
No, I mean, what are you going to do against this? You know, I mean, look at RecoN's army composition. He's adding hand cannoneers, which are good, but Elite Sipahi, they are quite the unit. I'm seeing just the hats that they have on now, which is fantastic, but they're going to be able to clean up hand cannoneers, longbowmen mass. Looking at what RecoN has, yeah, he has the military lead, but I feel like if he actually engages, we're going to see it completely evaporate.
Well, military lead, you're not including siege over there, and the siege is really the true difference. The siege is the true power of the Ottoman force here, as if we can see how much of the forward base of RecoN has already been destroyed. King's Palace about to go down, more production falling, keeps are going to be falling, and I feel like this is one of those that the writing's on the wall. RecoN, he's just trying to stop the bleeding, but the bleeding is just going to continue.
Yeah, and with those 3 bombards all the way in the back, no way to actually snipe them out from a ranged mass. I think RecoN is smelling desperation. Right now, all of those men-at-arms are trying to create a front line. Sipahi doing what they can to create the front line. Bombard, instead of going for the keep, which did go down, now he's going to start to target some of those units. And you can see the men-at-arms actually getting hit with those cannonballs and how devastating it is for them. It looks like there's enough units, but the men-at-arms, for how tanky they are on the eastern side and with defender's advantage, you can see them scheming in from the eastern side. Front line for Ottomans actually is going down.
It is going down, but that men-at-arms mass just went from 46 to 22 in the blink of an eye. The couple Great Bombards are still alive on the backside, and reinforcements going to be coming in for DeMu. They're getting closer on top of the siege, though. DeMu should be pulling some of this siege back, I believe, trying to kind of remass back up and keep it healthy, but maybe. Oh, there it is. Other Great Bombard goes down. Other Great Bombard goes down, and good couple pickups here by RecoN.
Because look at what RecoN did with this ranged mass on the eastern side. You can see it. There's a couple hand cannoneers there, maybe 3 longbowmen kind of spread out. The men-at-arms are the only thing that are really conglomerating or coagulating against each other. So when he's trying to take down ranged mass, which Bombards do a good job of doing, there wasn't able to get that juicy Great Bombard hit that we know and love, right? So it was difficult for him.
Yep. DeMu, you can see what his focus is on now. It is Sipahi, and Sipahi trade great into the longbows, into the hand cannoneers, and do just as fine enough against men-at-arms. So DeMu just focusing in on trying to get those numbers up. He's slowly trying to kind of creep this line forward, get into the heart of English's eco, and a keep definitely helps with that.
Yeah, at least it shores up this area, you know? I mean, it's going to be difficult. You're going into English network of castles, right? So it's always, or network of citadels, I should say. So it's always going to be difficult. But having that keep a little bit, just being able to pepper down some of those men-at-arms, especially the weak ones that get hit with bombard shots, that's really going to help. Both of these players are now licking their wounds. RecoN can't necessarily sustain that men-at-arms production, it looks like. He's getting 3,000 food per minute. And looking at his resources, he almost looks bottlenecked still.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy seeing the English economy like this, and DeMu, he doesn't need anything close to that amount of food production just because of military schools, because of the Ottomans' passive abilities. Sipahi moving forward, men-at-arms being that ball mass, and the trebuchet will start sieging down the keep of DeMu.
Yeah, this is one of those things that English really likes to do. You know, you can make trebuchets out of those keeps, right? So if you have the ability to do that, keeps and siege workshops, you can get enough trebuchets to try to take it down. And then hopefully for RecoN, what he wants to do is kind of creep
Ooh.
forward, but he is losing a lot of villagers here.
Yeah, just one full set of farms gets cleared up real quickly. The Sipahi can just run right back past and around again. And this is, again, now that DeMu has the mobility, it makes it very hard for English to actually hold if he utilizes that mobility effectively.
Yeah, and I think he's doing the best that he can. I mean, this is a tight area. You know, the keep will be able to get some good hits off, but hopefully it looks like he tried to split those Sipahi just a little bit. Maybe he doesn't have this entire area scouted and he went past the farm fields in that particular area. But because all of those men-at-arms are there trying to take down Sipahi, look at this. We have our screen right now, right next to the King's Palace. I'm not seeing a lot of blue here, Dabs.
No, a lot of the military mass gets pulled back into the base, which allows DeMu to move that front line forward even further. RecoN might not be looking at his trebuchets. Some Springles moving forward. Trebuchets get taken down, which makes the keep stay alive. And now we're just seeing a straight up Springle trades, but DeMu has his army forward, so there's no way that all of those Springles don't get out. Yep, and they all get taken down. DeMu still having siege support. Looking good for him, and there it is. Game over. Number 3 going to DeMu.
Wow. What an absolutely amazing game coming out from both of these players. I will say, I do think the Grand Galley really turned the tides, pun intended.
Yeah, it was one of those things that, like, we just saw it move back forward, and well, first, the defense that it just obliterated the Ram in the blink of an eye and made RecoN's whole mass forward pull back. And then not only that, it just crushed any reinforcing units, and it really, really hurt RecoN right as he hit Castle Age.
Yeah, that's such a weak spot for English, right? When you just go up to Castle Age, it's their quote-unquote weakest kind of age, right? So being able to use any kind of advantage, you know, whether it be a Grand Galley, whether it be, you know, the men-at-arms that he had, it was just enough to get rid of that feudal age English aggression. And it didn't really do too much in terms of changing his base, right? But we did see English and Ottoman on the other side. Now the roles are reversed, and the turns have tabled in regions. We have English and Ottomans yet again, but opposite sides.
Yeah, Ottomans versus English, English versus Ottomans. Take your choice. You know, we saw how it ended up going last game, but there's water involved. It always is a little bit different with no water, and Regions is a really cool map in general when I feel like the gameplay is a little bit different. You can't play the typical styles that you want to. It's not always like, oh, I have my Civ, I'm playing the way I play. You actually have to play to the map a lot.
Yeah, which is why, like, what do you think the reasoning for a DeMu is going for English on this map? Because we know with regions, you know, you have those areas of gold that you need. You have those outside areas of food. I guess for the English, I mean, I'm just kind of theorizing with you together. I just think that a lot of those regions, maybe they don't necessarily need to go out there. You know, the English can have farms and then they can get enclosures. So maybe those gold mines might not be that important.
Yeah, the food's not as much of a worry. They have their initial gold vein and then a backup one. So they got 8K gold, which is a lot of times enough to get English to where they need to get to before they need to actually retake the center and things of that sort. That being said, the English auto matchup in general is usually, like we just saw it, it's usually quite a bit of military units made, but Empire Wars changes it up a little bit. Obviously, with Empire Wars, we're kind of skipping the first couple minutes of play. Each side starts with a little bit more, like each civ starts with whatever their kind of uniqueness is. So Ottomans, they're going to have that blacksmith, they're going to have that military school. English, they're already going to have a full set of farms and just kind of get right into feudal age gameplay.
Yeah, and I think for English, maybe DeMu tries to do kind of the same thing, you know, as RecoN tried to do. You get a little bit of a feudal aggression. I mean, one of those things that make the Ottomans their kind of quote unquote weak point, especially in a 1v1 situation, is they need so much wood, right? Because they got to get their blacksmith, they got to get their military production, they got to get all that kind of stuff. So being able to have a military school and a blacksmith out of the gate with enough villagers, it might close that window. And I think RecoN, when he was playing English before, might have suffered from it. Maybe DeMu tries to do the same thing, maybe does it a little bit better. I don't know. But I do know if it does go to Imperial because of those bombards, I didn't see a good English answer for that.
No, not really too much, but we're gonna go ahead and get into this game number 4. Series is being led right now 2-1 DeMu. He's spawning in as the English in the north side, and we got RecoN in the south as the Ottomans. It's regions, so as expected, there will be some battle for map control here.
Yeah, I think that's what makes this map so much fun. You know, just that middle of the map. I mean, obviously you can see it on the lower right-hand part of your screen. You see the deer and the boar on the left side. You see the berries back on the right side. It might be something that the Ottomans might be thinking about doing. You know, going for those outside pocket food ecos are kind of important for them because they need wood for military production, not necessarily farms. English work the other way. You know, they could use things like farms and then they use the council hall for their production. DeMu actually going for a second town center up there too.
Yeah, and it looks like RecoN was going to be doing the same. He moved a good amount of villagers out to the stone. It could be a military school, but we did see Ottomans already go for a second TC when I would say in ones without Empire Wars being involved. They typically aren't as much of a second TC play. We've been seeing it a little bit more often, but this movement by RecoN definitely makes me think that he is planning on matching that quicker TC that DeMu is having as well.
Yeah, I think it can shore up some food resources for the Ottomans, so I think it's a pretty good idea. Usually for Ottomans, and what I've seen in a 1v1 situation, minus Empire Wars, when they go for that second TC, they get a little bit of aggression first, and then they put that TC behind it. When they get to Castle Age, this time not so much. They're going to go right for it. We're not going to see a trade network this time around. We got Twin Minaret for RecoN, and then obviously Council Hall for DeMu coming at a good pace. Now with that military school for RecoN, it does get a couple spearmen, but I mean, we all know a military school early against English, not really the best in terms of gaining an advantage.
It's not, but what I do like is right when Feudal Age hits in 3, 2, 1, you're able to immediately click it onto a unit that you want. You can cancel the spearmen if you know that you aren't going to need any spearmen at all, and go ahead and get that next unit in production, Sipahi or archers or really whatever your main focus is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking about whatever that main focus is for RecoN. Most likely, I mean, you mentioned it, probably Sipahi would be that area if DeMu's going to start pushing out longbowmen, or if he's going to go more the eco route, you know, for English. I've seen, even in 1v1 settings, English going 3 town centers. It almost looks like, based on, you know, we say on the minimap, the second town center going on gold. For DeMu, I think he's still on stone and might be trying to hit that third.
It's just, this is just immediately reminding me of some Divine gameplay. It's just
Absolutely.
your English, just multiple TCs. Good luck at trying to defend it and take those, or not defend it. Good luck at trying to aggress those TCs of the English. Just make a couple longbows, defend it up with the inherent civ bonuses, and all of a sudden your eco is going to be through the roof.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense as English with a third town center, right? Because every time an enemy unit gets near you, a town bell deafens you in your headphones. And with that third town center too, they have it's such a difficult thing to do, to go into an English base and actually rid it of villagers and start raiding and dealing with longbows and all of that kind of stuff. So to be honest, I mean, this 3 TC play, I really like it from DeMu. I think it's going to pay off. And then he has the potential in Castle Age, if he wants to take some of those gold mines, you can just plop a white tower there.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what we'll be expecting. Another kind of benefit for the English is in Empire Wars, they start with a full set of farms. So they're really able to support the multi-town center play very easy, not having to really deplete as many food resources as other civilizations.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right. Just the ability to generate their own kind of income, right? But RecoN, also with the amount of villagers that he has on stone, I think he's following suit with DeMu here.
Yeah, maybe it's one that he scouted out and knew that he needs to match it. It's one that I actually wouldn't have hated if he just said, all right, well, you're inviting me to go quicker to a Castle Age and really get that military schools online and forward, or even the fast imp play that we've been seeing.
Yeah, and it looks like, I mean, even though I called maybe a second town center before, obviously we see him go off with 200 stone, meaning he'll be able to get those 2 more military schools, right, with those being at 100 stone. So looks like it was just 2 TC and military school idea, and then we're going to eco to castle as quickly as we can. And that's a really good thing that the Ottomans do in order to preserve their resources to go up to castle, because they're never not producing something. So it helps a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like when we saw DeMu with the quicker castle age the game before. It was like all of a sudden he had some spears forward, some things that were kind of out on the map, and it was like Annie's castle. It's like, yeah, well, he's still making Sipahi right now, just passively, and able to deny the scout of DeMu because of that, which, again, now RecoN dropping the MIA right as DeMu's scout got taken out, but pretty sure DeMu clicked on that gold, saw how many villagers were on that gold, and knows exactly what's coming.
Yeah, and you can see he's already, as he's trying to get his farm economy established, you can see it on the top part with how much gold. I mean, that's why you put a second town center there in the first place, right? All of those villagers can just go right there. It might be a little bit slower, but again, the MIA doesn't necessarily pay off as a landmark until about a couple minutes after it's built anyway. So it gives DeMu just a little bit of time, and he's going to continue to keep going up on the economic side of things in the meantime.
Yep. And so, what is going to be the immediate focus from RecoN? MIA finishes. He's obviously, looks like he's dropping an archery range. So, is that going to be mass archers? I would think it. I mean, crossbows I could see, but there's no like men-at-arms out on the other side yet. So it feels weird to already make that far ahead of time. But it is crossbows.
Yeah, I could have seen either or, right, for archers or cross. Obviously not janissaries, right, because we know what English army composition usually is. But with crossbowmen, because you're probably expecting some Iron Chad men-at-arms coming out of the English in Castle Age. Now, DeMu is going to go up that White Tower. However, not going to put it in the middle. I think he realizes that, the map control that he has as English usually isn't that high. He's been really focused on his base with 3 town centers. So White Tower is forward, but more of a base protection than a map controlling entity.
Yeah, you're English. If you can keep your 3 town centers pumping and your eco all the way through the roof, then you really do feel like you have control of the game. It leaves enough room for another set of farms behind this White Tower as well. And so really DeMu is in a very scary positioning point to be able to pump a ton of units out. He just doesn't have that production to do that yet.
Yeah, and this is what makes English such a good civ to play as you're going up in ages, right? So he's got 3 different mills that are completely full of farms, and that's where he really spent his wood, right? Even though those farms are half price, they're still going to cost a decent amount for how many farms you're making. So as far as production buildings, you kind of put them on the back burner, right? But RecoN on the other side, look how aggressive he is with this blacksmith. He's putting down some military production buildings right in front. He's trying to take defenders' advantage out of the equation.
Yep. So the mangonel is going to be coming out. The question is for RecoN, do you start sieging down the White Tower, or do you just try to like go around the White Tower and get into other parts of the eco?
Yeah, that's a good question too. I mean, I feel like when you're the English going into their main base, dealing with a keep and all of those town centers, I feel like you're begging for a disaster, right? So maybe going around it, and I think DeMu knows that going around might be more of a volatile area to defend, so he walls up that eastern side. So a really good heads-up play, and this is one of those things that we see it in our god mode, in caster mode, seeing what's going on and being like, yeah, that's a really good idea. But DeMu doesn't have that, but the game sense that he has to make sure he's walling the areas, it's really chef's kiss. It's good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those, when you play this game so much, you know what to expect, you know what's coming, but it's still like, it's crazy knowing the timings. It's like so on point with all of these.
Yeah, it's really crazy to watch, and we watch it game in and game out with all of these top players now. RecoN actually with that blacksmith going to be adding some siege workshops in this particular area. So I guess if the only way you can go is forward, and especially against English, you better get some siege before you start doing stuff. And luckily Ottomans are the ones that are really, really good at that. He's adding trebuchets, he's adding mangonels. He does have a springald already in there too, so he's going heavy on that food income, and this looks like a Castle Age kind of all in for him.
Yeah, look at the production difference right now. DeMu, he's got 2 longbows in production, and that's it. Meanwhile, RecoN on the other side, he's got men-at-arms, he's got mangonels, he's got trebuchets, he's building more siege workshops up front and forward. He is literally all over the place, ready to ride this one out. He's even dropping a little wall segment, and the reason being, protect his trebuchets from springolds.
Oh man, how frustrating is that? You know, that little stone wall fragment. And for DeMu, you know, I mean, he might have vision of this for the White Tower. He might have, you know, a scout in the vicinity or whatever. But he's gonna try to click on those trebuchets with the springolds, and they're gonna keep creeping up and up and up, and you're gonna be like, yo, like, you're in range, like, stop moving and snipe something. So until he sees that stone wall, he might lose a couple springolds if he's not careful.
Yeah, and you can see him now. There we go, sees the stone wall, but now he's gonna see a keep and an outpost that's being built as well. So RecoN giving himself a lot of vision. It looks like DeMu might have just run out of his gold vein.
Yeah, I think so too.
And
I don't see any gold.
Oh, that's a secondary gold right there. Oh no.
This is such a good spot from RecoN, and you might say a pretty bad spawn from DeMu just because of how forward that gold is. There is no way for him to get gold, which means because he's sitting at 300, you got to think, what's the other way to get gold? I mean, I guess enclosures, right? You can't really get out of here.
You got to drop a market, start selling off resources, which you don't want to end up doing. White Tower's getting sieged down, and again, he just queued up 21 spears in production. 21 spears. You think DeMu is rattled a little bit right now? You think he's a little worried about this push from RecoN?
I think he's shaking in his boots, Dabs, with all that. But even with the amount of spearmen, like, what are you gonna do against all of the spear? I mean, yeah, you can make 50 spearmen, but like, RecoN, he has a little bit of Sipahi that he used for raiding. That's pretty much it. All of his army is either siege or it's on the ground.
Yeah, the spears aren't really the counter units that's needed, but DeMu, it's all he has. It's all he can make. Like, maybe, yeah, he could transition to some horsemen with it, but he doesn't have any horsemen upgrade. Those would be just pitiful little weak horsemen.
Yeah, and even if he did make horsemen, look at how many Janissaries RecoN has. They would be targets. They wouldn't even be units at this point. It's basically those Janissaries would be going skeet shooting.
Yep, and RecoN is also not only denying relics, but securing some relics for himself. DeMu, though, he realizes the situation. He's feeling like he needs to push up. Look at this infantry mass, though. This is just asking him to get absolutely wiped and obliterated for free. Just send some men-at-arms that way. There's only 8 crossbows into this mix. The Janissaries are there, the spears are there, and DeMu, he might not be taking a fight he should have wanted to take, and all during this time, the Trebs are still sieging the front side.
Yeah, I mean, this is just more necessity, if anything else, right? He feels like if he continues to stay in that English base, he's dead, right? So he's got to make something happen. He's trying to kite with longbowmen, trying to take down Janissaries, but there's enough of a men-at-arms mass, something that DeMu can't make. He's continuously staying on 76 gold. There's no trading posts. He's screwed.
Yeah, this is one of those that great game plan by RecoN. He just is able to continue this push forward. Springolds, again, had that weird little targeting because of that stone wall. Almost got themselves into a location that they didn't want to, and that little bit of a mass by DeMu finally gets cleared up. I don't know about this keep here by RecoN.
Yeah, that keep might be a little difficult, only with 4 or 5 villagers there. It will end up going down, which is fine, but it's the main thing you're trying to get out of it is the gold, and now RecoN's military mass starting to provide some reinforcements over there on the eastern side. I mean, yeah, DeMu's got those 4 springolds, and that's all well and good, but he doesn't have the gold to make more of them.
Yeah, as any of these gold units get taken down by of DeMu's, it's so much harder to replace those. RecoN started a timer with the sacred sites. Technically, 1 of 3 landmarks is already down. We saw a landmark victory earlier, so could he potentially go for just 2 quick landmark snipes with how many trebuchets he still has out? It's 5 of them.
Yeah, and I think it's honestly, I think it's a really good play against English. Why go full steam ahead into his base if you can just sit with trebuchets 10 tiles away and just pick them off?
Yep. Slowly kind of creeping up with these outposts, with these keeps. White tower making sure it's not up, and that white tower, that was that main defense point that you were talking about earlier, the front side of his base that he felt like he would have been doing such a good job protecting, but it's just not.
No, I mean, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to protect anything when you're in shambles, and I see villagers trying to like you repair it over there on the northwestern side, but he's got a northeastern problem right now, and it's mangonels at 6 Springles barreling down this English base. Longbowmen doing what they can to back up. They do have that aura, so it is going to help them out. Mangonel with a huge shot. More shots. All these longbows, they're dead.
Not only the longbows are dead, the Springles are dead with it, and DeMu goes ahead, throws in the towel. Our second series of the day will be going the distance. We are going to go to a game number 5.
You know, it was nice that throughout the last, I would say, like 2 or 3 minutes of this game, we kind of we smelled blood in the water, you know, for RecoN. We kind of knew inevitably if he was able to continue to put a strangle on English, put a strangle on that gold, he was able to take it out. But what a theatric and climactic way to get this series tied up. With all of those mangonel shots taking down those longbowmen, we haven't seen a good mangonel shot, I feel like, today. That was icing on the cake. That was a good game 4.
Yeah. Well, we talked about the gold being a problem before the game, but what I had said was that he has 8k gold. You have your vein and you have your secondary vein. The problem for DeMu was his secondary vein was already denied with the keep that RecoN dropped forward to secure the map side, so he only had 1 gold secured from the start.
Yeah, I mean, 8k gold you think isn't that much, you know, starting out in regions. Try 4. See what you could do with it. Probably not much, you know, so difficult for DeMu. Now, in this game 5, however, our second game 5 of the day, look at what we have, Dabston. It's a Roost game.
It's Basin again as the map 2 that Roost is being played on, and playing against Molly as well. So we saw Molly earlier by DeMu, and it really felt like he had the opportunity to close the game out, but couldn't figure out the way to do it. So let's see if that kind of could be the same factor. I know Roost is a Civ that does have some good inherent defenses as well.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it really, just because of the Kremlin, and everybody knows how difficult the Kremlin is to deal with, whether to attack in front of it or the little militia that spawn out as a reason for it. So not necessarily the most rateable Civ that we have out of the 10 civilizations currently, but for Malians, I feel like they still end up matching up seemingly well with the Roost, just because for a lot of what the Roost likes to do, I mean, there's a reason why their logo that you can see on the center of your screen is a guy on a horse. Malian Donzos, pretty good.
Yeah. You know, each of these civs kind of have their different streaks to lean into. But one thing I will say is this map in general is one that kind of, I felt like it used to be like played all the time in tournaments, and then we kind of saw it like fall out of favor, and now it's kind of re-emerging again. So it's one that's really cool with the way it plays. I want to say it's probably one of the first 3 custom maps that will start to utilize quite a bit in tournaments, away from just the ones that were made from the ladder.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this Basin revival, honestly, over the past couple weeks. And I know for the Roost, just because, as you can see the actual picture on the map, these different forests and these different areas create little pockets of wood economies. So we see some pretty good high trade houses here. Let's be real.
Speaking of, you know, it's one that, you know, I got to call you out over here on you're a Roost man, and there's sometimes where I question your high trade house placements over here.
So do I.
All right. Well, good. All right. Well, that wasn't going the way I was expecting it, but yeah.
No, I completely agree with you. Not great.
Oh, well, we'll see what we got in store for us here. Obviously, we've seen some cool builds. We've seen some very, very quick castle age timings. We've seen some very economically focused games where we just saw 3 TCs dropped very, very quickly by DeMu. And so with Roost, with Molly, they both obviously like to invest in their eco some, but definitely turn it into military, I feel like, faster than what some other civs we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we saw the Malians do that with DeMu and the ability he got harassed in the beginning with his passive eco, but he was still able to turn it into a military prowess that can take up half his population. You know, and that's something very difficult for I mean, he was as the Chinese that RecoN was playing before. We're talking about the Rus as DeMu, any other civilization. No matter what the unit, if you have 100 of them streaming at you, yeah, it's going to be difficult. And we're going to see if RecoN is able to do that, where he was having trouble before, now spawning in with this pivotal game 5 Liquid DeMu playing as the Rus in the color red, spawning on the south end of this basin. His opponent playing as the Malians. It's win or go home, at least in this series anyway. It's RecoN playing as the Malians in the color blue. Now, take a look at, we always have to look at Malian spawn, right? Because of this first gold mine. This first pit mine, impressively forward, I must say.
Yeah, and it's one that, look at RecoN's Q already. He goes ahead, he drops a barracks, and he's getting some Donzos out. And it's one that I feel like this is because the majority of civilizations love to just drop a barracks and start going ahead and sending some spears over to that pit mine because it is so important to deny.
Yeah, and it feels like just one or two Donzos might be enough for you. But oh my goodness, take a look at this Kremlin spot, Dabs. We had a deer infestation, which I call 2 patches right next to each other. 14 deer in the vicinity of that Kremlin. And as soon as I started hyping it up, he decides to completely change it and go by the stone mine.
I was about to throw so many holes into that Kremlin placement.
I know.
I was like, it's like a mile away from his base. It's like,
yeah, it was for sure.
Yeah, it protects the deer, but like, that's about it. At least with this Kremlin location, he's gonna get the bonus. Well, he actually already has the bonus because it's wooden fortress, but it protects up the stone, and his backside gold is somewhat protected by it as well. Because think about trying to raid RecoN's base. You're gonna head towards the front side of that Kremlin, and you're like, oh crap, I gotta run all the way around, or I gotta go all the way back around the wood line, which means you're on the TC side.
Yeah, this is a really nice placement. I like this a lot better than the deer patch. I mean, maybe that deer patch might be a second town center area or something like that. It's still like, it's really in harm's way, that area. So we'll see if he wants to do anything in regards to that. But now Kremlin is up. We have probably about half of DeMu's villagers on stone right now. I'm very curious. What's your under-over on town center count for him?
I mean, I think he just goes 2 here. You can already see RecoN investing into Donzos, and as much as DeMu would love to place that secondary town center on those deer, he's going to need archers before he can even think about doing so.
Yeah, and it's difficult to do that, to try to get that second town center up as quickly as possible. I mean, a little bit easier in Empire Wars just because of how many villagers you get in the beginning. You can see DeMu hovering on almost 800 wood. But you got to get your archery range. You got to get your archers, and all that stuff costs wood, right? So, and time. So it might delay that second town center from coming in. He does have some berries on the western side, which, not necessarily what you want out of a town center placement, but still could be okay. But it looks like these Donzos from RecoN, I mean, again, this is game sense. This is having good game sense. He knows where an ideal food location for a town center can go.
Yeah, and it does look like DeMu just dropping that TC a little bit safer on that left side of the wood line. So he's got the Kremlin on the right of his TC. He's got the other TC on the left, and kind of just giving himself a little bit of extra defense. He's obviously has a wooden fortress there as well. But this leaves a lot of the map to kind of just be open. He's, cornering himself in a sense, and he doesn't have a lot of resources behind. Just, another couple sets of berries and maybe a gold vein on the other side.
Yeah, this was a pretty interesting spawn for him, wasn't it? I mean, for Rus especially, they're not the type to stray away from being carnivores, right? Unless they particularly need to. And it looks like just because of the map control that RecoN had by just 5 Donzos. Can you believe it? 5 Donzos is all it took to try to get DeMu from going away from that greedy town center placement. And now, for DeMu, as he's going to go into that second town center, perhaps a Castle Age, kind of not sure, depending on what his macro is kind of developing into, or the production buildings that he has. He does have a good area to attack, because we talked about how forward that first gold mine is. Second one, even more forward.
Yeah, but I don't know what he would be attacking with, because he only has scouts out. Nothing in queue, no production buildings dropped. It does look like he is planning on a faster Castle Age timing. He has the wood to drop the production buildings. He's just not doing it yet. I think we just maybe saw a barracks or a range go down there. But has invested into eco upgrade, so is definitely planning on just kind of booming once castle hits into this full-fledged men-at-arms ball.
Men-at-Arms is interesting. I think that I remember a Ruse vs. Malian game that I previously played, and I usually forget that Men-at-Arms exist while playing against Malians, because you remember, or some of us probably have flashbacks to the Musafati steamrolling that we would all get and getting Farimba'd down to death. So sometimes Men-at-Arms isn't really a unit that you think about making. Then we're going into a little bit of spears, and then with that archery range, the nice thing about Ruse, which might be able to help him in this matchup, is the food economy has been, or the wood economy, excuse me, is pretty good. So he's able to pump out some of those archers, but there's a high trade house placement. It's probably the best that he can get.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is like, you don't always think about the stealth force, but the stealth force does provide a good bit of extra gold there for him. He's getting some good scouting, knowing when RecoN's gonna be going up, kind of how many cows he's gonna have at that point in time as well. But DeMu is full ready on this castle aged all in. I feel like he's just gonna do this timing push. We saw archery range being dropped as well, so he's just ready for anything.
Yeah, I feel like with the kind of game sense these players have, you know, he's seeing how many cattle ranches are going on. He kind of knows when RecoN might hit the castle age button. So this might give him probably, I'd say he's got about a solid minute to a minute and a half to really do some damage to this passive eco. But if he doesn't, I feel like these first 3 or 4 minutes that he's in castle and RecoN is not is going to be crucial to him taking over this game and perhaps winning this series.
I was expecting like this ABBA queue after you age up, and then I've remembered that like he's been spending food. He ages up, he's got 3 barracks, 3 ranges. He queues up 1 men-at-arms and 1 crossbow. Doesn't really have the bank in there to have this timing push that we were talking about. He had a quick castle timing, but not these units that are popping out very quick after.
No, and especially with them trickling out, right? We just had 1 or 2 spearmen go down, a scout went down. He only has 1 men-at-arms, just like you said. He's got more in queue, which is going to take a little bit more time. It's very difficult for Roos, especially, you know, you have 2 town centers where you don't get any discounts on villagers, and both of your deer patches are essentially denied, right? So going for food, it's just, it's a struggle for him.
Yeah, and that's where we will start to see what RecoN has in store planned too, because DeMu, he's already starting to make those warrior monks. He's going to secure up those relics and then probably have those join forces with him as well. But at this point in time, I feel like RecoN, he's sitting pretty happy with the way the game's gone so far.
Yeah, I feel like a Malian player loves it when they don't deal with any feudal aggression, right? I mean, he was able to, his pit mines have not been touched. He was able to cattle boom very well. It has a very good castle time. Now he can pump whatever units he wants because he has barracks and archery ranges. And it's a frustrating thing when you're dealing with the Malians because you're seeing Donzos, you're like, okay, I'll go men-at-arms. But it's the same exact building that can create your hard counter, which is Musafati. And you see he did queue a couple. He is queuing sofas. He's queuing javelin archers. It's kind of like a potpourri of an army composition going on.
Yep. First relic being secured, and DeMu was able to at least get out to those deer that you were talking about, unable to access beforehand just due to all the pressure from RecoN, who I felt like could have potentially even kept up the pressure a little bit.
Yeah, I was curious. I mean, just to kind of be disruptive, right? If anything, he is adding javelin throwers, which, you know, we talked about javelin throwers and the ability that they could actually do to raid because of the ranged armor that they have. They can sit and take a little bit of the TC fire, but DeMu only with looks like about 13 of a villager lead just because of that town center going down probably about minute 4-ish, something like that, where you're taking a look at RecoN's food per minute, gold per minute compared to DeMu's. Even though DeMu's up 13, it's neck and neck, typical Malian gameplay.
It is, and it's again playing against Mali, you always have to be producing units. If you all of a sudden stop production for a little bit, you are going to find yourselves overrun quite a bit. And so that's where DeMu, he's just nonstop onto spears and to archers right now.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, you got to make something, right? And you're exactly right. I mean, he sees sofas in there now with the spearmen. They're kind of acting as scouts more than anything else. So he sees a little bit of an army composition. I really like the mixing of what RecoN's doing because there's spears and men-at-arms in that comp from DeMu. So got to add a little bit of Musafati, which is what he's doing. I think those sofas are really going to help him out just in terms of how many spearmen that DeMu has. One thing, DeMu is getting relics. I think he's going to finish with about 3.
Yeah, I mean, 3, at least you know you are up and have more than your opponent. Could potentially even get a 4th one for himself. He just has an army to go through first.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough army to get through, that's for sure. And you can see exactly, we're watching your point unfold of continuously producing against Mali because of how many units they have in the queue, and they're continuing to have a military lead. With the amount of army, it's rather impressive how much army they can put out at a moment's base. You know, they're at 50. DeMu's trying to claw up to 50. With those crossbowmen and those archers, though, for Bruce in the Castle Age, what's nice is for the Malians, there's only 1 unit, and they can counter both of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I find that's Mali will kind of be in that standpoint a lot at times, but that's where kind of you'll make these transitions, and you'll see these huge transitions by these players where all of a sudden it feels like they're getting 1 or 2 dimensional with their army composition, and then they change it up really, really quickly.
Yeah, that's the frustrating part, right? They can, at a moment's notice, they can do that now. Sacred Site, a safe one for either side. Obviously, we're playing on Basin, so we're going to see some of those getting capped. That Wooden Fortress in a really good spot for DeMu because he can kind of see what's going on, right? I mean, the arrow slits obviously helps him out, but just having an idea of an army composition, you know, is really going to help him.
And now we go ahead.
It seems like both of these players, like, they're continuing to. We saw this bait on Hill and Dale. You know, this feels so similar.
Yeah. We're finally starting to see the imported armor come in. So maybe RecoN has just been kind of waiting for this timing, waiting for his upgrades, and then he's starting to push forward. You can see he's slowly been starting to creep up, just here and there, kind of testing the waters a little bit. But upgrade's about to be finished, and Military Academy upgrade too. Ram is on the field. It looks like RecoN's planning on going all in.
Yeah, and I think he's going to have a good capacity to do so. I mean, even though he just has 1 ram, he's going to stop those walls from getting built, and here they are. Sofas, scouts, Donzos, just about everything that you can make in the Malian Empire coming in that 1 ram trying to take down that wooden fortress. I think for DeMu, if he does have the food and he does have the population space, this could be a Kremlin time to help him.
Yeah, you might need to just be calling those militia. A couple of those vills that were building the forward wooden fortress get taken down. Not the worst thing at this point in the game, but obviously you never want to be losing units for nothing.
No, absolutely not. And I think RecoN is doing a good job of knowing where the weak point in DeMu's not only base, but in his civilization is, right? I mean, these food resources are so important for him. He doesn't want to farm transition right now because if he does, he stops making units. And if you stop making units against the Malians, of course, you're in for a recipe of disaster. Has to vacate this area. And RecoN didn't really meet much in the way of resistance. Probably just going to keep pushing.
100% going to keep pushing. There is a mangonel there, but double rams are going to lead the way. And the sofa number is almost at 30. The javelin number almost at 30. I feel like DeMu, he just hasn't been able to deal with this enough, and it's mainly just due to that food situation you keep mentioning.
Yeah, and I mean, we're watching what the Malians do when they get untouched. The mangonel is going to be able to dive into that stealth forest, or at least the rocks will take down some HP on some sofas, and the like Springles just continue to trade off for one another, but it's all about taking down that mango. I feel like for the Malians, he does have sofas. If he's able to get around to that mango, looks like he's not going to be able to, but look at the splits by RecoN. Oh my god.
Yeah, DeMu just forced to pull back. Another mangonel comes out. The sofa immediately split off, going towards that secondary mangonel. Initial one stops to fire on in. A lot of the jab throwers hitting the TC, though, not exactly where they need to be, and the boys have been called. The militia are on the way. Springle pulls up, and I think the Springle to RecoN gets taken out first. It does. Great trade by DeMu there.
Yeah, that was a really photo finish with that Springle, right? We saw that first trade a little bit before, and yeah, I mean, DeMu, we're seeing the power of the militia, right? These militia, they have a decent amount of HP. You know, they have a decent amount of attack in Castle Age. You know, they're able to hold their own a little bit. So this is going to give DeMu enough time. It gives them the military advantage for probably the next 30 seconds but he's going to be able to lick his wounds. He's going to be able to figure out what to do in terms of getting food. You know, he can probably do a safe farm transition now without the Malian Empire breathing down his neck, right? So maybe this is just the amount of time that DeMu needs.
And there we finally see the militia disappear. Some Sofa in the back line getting cleaned up on the wood line of DeMu's. And I believe that DeMu, he's just going to, again, he has to remass back up. He has to build up those numbers again. And he's running out of space. He's running out of resources.
Yeah, he is. I think we're not as radical, but we are seeing a little bit of a starvation tactic. And I think that's a main motif of RecoN over the past 5 games. He's done a good job in the games that he's won. He's done a really good job of taking away a resource from DeMu, and hopefully for his sake he's able to do the same exact thing. Now does still have a military lead because again he's able to produce. DeMu doing that farm transition over there on the east side. RecoN might be thinking it's go time again. He's going to lose siege.
Mangonel and Springle just left out to dry. Some villagers tried to come to heal it up, but didn't quite get there fast enough. Sofa's just going to pull back away, and RecoN might just move back forward with his mass. Looks like he might be going for a little bit of a circle around the north right side. Very
yeah, I mean, that's
slow.
It's quite slow, isn't it? Out of snail's pit, but they'll get there. They'll get there when they're good and ready. This is the one really powerful thing about the Malians. You know, with 72 villagers that they have, they're at their late game economy. You know, DeMu is trying to get there to do things like transition. So that's why we're seeing a military count 95 to 64. And for RecoN, he's not going to slow down.
Yeah, you can see the income per minute. It's like DeMu's up on Vills, but, you know, you got to think about when China was up 30 Vills, we were still seeing ecos pretty similar, and Molly beating on the food, beating them on the gold, and even on the wood as well. So just Molly in all favors right now when it comes to the economy.
Yeah, in every facet of the game, I think RecoN is doing well in terms of his macro, making sure he continually push out. Now populations for each players are pretty similar, 186 to 176. But again, just because of the stockpile and the ability for RecoN to get as much food per minute as he's getting, I think if he does lose an army, if he tries to get a push, he's able to continuously build it up. I think for DeMu, he'd struggle more.
Yeah, just it's that much harder to reboom back up. And oh my, we are at 120 military units for RecoN compared to 90 for DeMu, so quite a bit of a better military prowess. He's got about 3,500 on the army value lead, starting to push up on that right side. It's just Sofa's diving into a fight that they shouldn't be. I think we're at the point though that RecoN might be able to just group up and end.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Let's just get everybody together. We'll talk about our strategy and then we'll just dive right in. I mean, it looks like there's 2 different masses right now, half and half for each, but I think just for RecoN, the one thing in his army composition that might be difficult is DeMu's got 5 Springolds, right? So if he's able to take down some of the siege, maybe this range mass becomes quite a difficult thing for DeMu to stop. And I kind of think for RecoN, if he continues to push, he would have the ability to stop any kind of Kremlin militia to keep continuously producing and to stop this Imperial Age. Not the best timing. High Armory coming up, but RecoN following with the fort.
Oh, High Armory's coming in, but it's also going down when RecoN's raiding the base, hitting the gold, hitting the food. And you know what you need when Imperial Age goes through for it to be effective at all? You need gold.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's gonna need all these upgrades. He's gonna need a Streltsy population. He's gonna need a lot of things for Roost. They're a little bit high maintenance in terms of the Imperial category, so it's been difficult for him. Their Sofas left unattended, taking
Invisible
down
Sofa.
this villager line. Oh my God, look at these worker kill counts. He's almost at 30.
30-0 right now. Sofa still on the backside. The High Armory finishes. Fort of the Huntress not too far away though. And I mean, RecoN, he's only been raiding with small parties, and it's been making DeMu's whole entire military just stay back and just stay distracted.
Yeah, I mean, and also, I mean, not only is the military getting distracted, but it's effective. And not only the distraction, but actually killing villagers. You know, DeMu has been on double the town centers, for the last 15 minutes, and we only have a +11 differential with all the passive income of Malians, a big +1 to the Malian eco.
Yeah, I'm still surprised though RecoN hasn't decided to actually kind of push forward with this game and close out the game. I feel like this is almost what was happening to DeMu when he was playing Mali, where it felt like he should have pulled the trigger, never did, and it's giving DeMu time to stabilize here.
Yeah, I think so too. Just, you know, I feel like every second, every minute that he doesn't continue to push forward, he's giving DeMu just that little bit of air to breathe. You know, where with how much map control the Malians have right now, you have the ability to just go in there and suffocate.
Looks like DeMu is trying to get some sort of a raid in on the other side, but there's walls there, and RecoN slowly pushing forward with his mass, but let's see if it actually decides to take a fight.
Yeah, I mean, we see it pushing a little bit to the east. Maybe he's more hell-bent on the sacred site than anything else. He's going to be able to decap it with his army, but you can see the red mass on the south side where DeMu is. It's starting to move a little bit east, while RecoN doing the great job of just pulling a little bit of sofas away, where this is the main mass, this is the main thing that you're dealing with. But if you have some sofas in the opposite area, you're going to idle some eco too.
Yeah, just splitting to a couple different groups, and you're able to do this with how many military units he has compared to DeMu.
Yeah, and the fact there's no wall, you know, for RecoN in the back. Yeah, he's got a lot of spearmen here. They're elite spearmen. He's got some men-at-arms up here too, but like, they can't do anything. You know, they can't do any damage. They're not going to be able to torch down a wall very easily or very effectively. But I think on the east side, we're going to see that big clash we've been waiting for.
Yeah, it looks like armies are finally starting to battle it on out. RecoN built an outpost there as well. Doesn't have all of his mass here, and DeMu does, and DeMu has the siege, so forces RecoN back, and the losses are heavy.
That's amazing. You know, it just shows how important siege superiority is. You know, there's 7 Springholds for DeMu. There's 4 on the side of RecoN, and I know we talk about Springholds over and over again, but if you let Mangonels just continuously take shots over and over again, you're gonna lose fights.
Yeah, you might be able to dodge. I don't care how great your micro is. I've seen so many people dodge 8, 9, 10 Mangonel shots in a row, but then all of a sudden they take one and it's all over from there, and makes it just that much more difficult. You always got to be spinning your APM there. You got to be focusing so much, but DeMu does overstep with a bit of his army, is able to get a little portion cleaned up, and the Sofa are still just being spammed in to attempt to raid, but hasn't really, I guess, been the thing to close the game out.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like DeMu's trying to wall up. You know, he's trying to stop those raids from happening, but it seems like if RecoN just keeps putting those Sofas, you can see the villager corpses sprawling across the middle of this basin here trying to make walls. If he keeps sending Sofas every 5 to 10 seconds, he's never going to have the ability to.
Yep, the initial gold vein ran out, so DeMu had to move out to the eastern sides, dropping a keep on that other gold, but that's still, we know how hungry Roos is when it comes to gold. Fortunately for DeMu, he's got 3,000 in the bank.
Yeah, that is nice. That little bit of stockpile, and it was enough for him to get a decent amount of upgrades that he needs, right? We're seeing some of the siege upgrades coming in. I would assume he's got wandering towns by now as well, because there's probably only one way. If you're going to take it to the Malian player, you're going to have to make a bunch of rams and tell him to deal with it.
And that might be exactly what's happening. Those wandering towns are headed across the map. They're going to be looking for some buildings, some structures to destroy.
Yeah, I think with just 1 or 2, maybe it might not be enough, but oh my god, look at that Springhold army that we got over here. It reminds me of Season 0 Age of Empires, that little age of Springholds where everyone was just kissing each other with them. But Sofa's trying to get another raid, got hit with crossbowmen and a decent amount of Springhold bolts, so you know, a lot of them will get cleaned up, but it's enough to make the mental bandwidth keep going for DeMu, and I think that's what these raids are costing more.
Yeah, it does seem like RecoN might have kind of been able to stabilize the numbers here, but DeMu's eco is completely fine. It's been taking damage, but he has plenty of resources in the bank. He's got everything he needs. He's got the upgrades that he's been needing, and he's just kind of slowly been methodically playing this game, slowly pushing on.
Yeah, I think we're seeing, like, the reason why is RecoN let off the pressure And now with a couple bit of Streltsy, he's got some elite crossbowmen here. He'll be able to make short work of some of the Springolds, the Musafatis, all of those really squishy units that the Malians like to have. The Streltsy are kind of split up in different control groups. There's 7 to 8 Rams just bypassing the battle completely, moving up north, trying to find a building to take down. And to be honest, DeMu, he's really holding his own in this fight. Enough firepower out of those Streltsy to get that military mass from RecoN to back up again.
Yeah, and we saw how bad it was when Mali no longer had that 100 military mass in games prior. All of a sudden, yeah, they can remass back up fast, but they're not remassing up with the same quality of units that their opponent is.
Yeah, I think this is kind of we're seeing a weak point in Mali, right? I mean, they have that big spike in Castle Age and how many units that they have that are pretty effective. Now, not so much. And you're seeing 4 Rams finally make contact with the fort. Half of its HP is already down. RecoN knows there's a little bit of desperation in here. He's trying to get to the siege. You see that flank all the way on the western side. Springolds are trying to take bolts at those Rams. It looks like that fort, I don't know, it might be at about 5%. It's trying to go down. It's burning, but now Springolds are finding Springolds to try to get bolts off. And obviously with the high armory upgrade, having that little bit of excess range is going to help him out. That fort now getting repaired by just 1 villager saving it.
Hey, it's just enough. It's exactly where he needed to get to. Barely alive. I'm pretty sure some Springolds could probably finish it on up. But DeMu, he's actually kind of regrouping, starting to, as you say, lick his wounds and get back together and get ready for this next push.
Yeah, honestly, I think what's keeping him in every one of these battles and keeping him continuously pushing up is the amount of Springolds that he has. He's got 10 Springolds on the battlefield right now. Not necessarily mangonels. He's not looking for damage. He's got damage. He's got Streltsy, right? So the Springolds are just making sure that those Streltsy aren't getting any kind of mass casualty reports. You know, a couple mangonels trying to take down these Rams. But again, these are towns. Maybe get one more hit. That's a down fort.
That does now open up this mid-map. There is no longer this Fort of the Huntress in the center. It is denied. That 1 villager, yeah, it can start repairing that, but he has quite a bit of a task ahead of himself now that it was fully taken down.
Yeah, that, and he's got a firing squad coming up on that villager. It's going to end up going down. RecoN trying to make some form of siege. He's got a couple mangonels. One gets sniped down through Palisade Gate, trying to change. He's got Musafati, and he's got Sofas, and it looks like he was trying to go for Musafati gunners. It looks like there's about 3 or 4 of them. Not really sure how much of an impact when DeMu is continuously just going to his archery range and spamming that E key and just going into Streltsy continuously.
Yeah, Streltsy are that unit that counters everything. They're just good against everything for the most part. Actually, they are good against everything. And especially if they're standing still, they get that static deployment bonuses. And yeah, maybe houses they aren't quite the best against, but unit-wise.
Yeah, buildings are tough, right? I need bigger bullets in order to take down some of those, but the Rams are just as good at taking that. Actually, a lot better. As you see some of those houses going down, Siege Workshop going down. For RecoN, he's trying to mass up it looks like one final time for one final push. He has a military mass of 101. DeMu's got about 40 in the siege department, so it's still 101 to about 99. So we'll see if RecoN has the ability to. He's trying to get a flank over there on the eastern side. Look at those stealth Musafatis. I'm so glad we're in God mode. We can see those things.
Yeah, and there are 61 of those Musafati out on the field. The question is, are they still the unit that used to be the same kind of unit that was great, that everyone used to mass on up, or they've kind of lost their prowess, I feel like? Able to close out, get on top of some of the Springolds. That 10 number went down to 7 real quick, 6 real quick. And DeMu's army does get circled, 35 units, 30 units left, and he is having that mass fall quite quickly.
Yeah, that might have been a little bit of an overextension. I think the MVP in that fight was you had about 10 to 12-ish javelin throwers on the eastern side, really pecking at those Streltsy, doing a good job. Now, Sofa's trying to make sure this keep doesn't go up for the Roost, but there are way too many villagers. That's going to go up.
Yeah, you could see that RecoN wanted to immediately start denying that keep with a Siege Workshop there, which he fast builds the Siege Workshop, I guess just in time for it to fall. And DeMu actually, he's down in villagers now. And he just lost that whole military mass as this is happening. He's transitioning to gold. He doesn't have any gold left. This was the worst timing for this to happen for DeMu.
Yeah, he's really on the back foot here now. I mean, losing that Streltsy mass, it's so difficult to come back up with, right? I mean, he's trying to send rams in that direction, but now for the Mali, they did such a good hold up there on the north side. Now they're going to start their snowball all over again, and you're going to see them push south, whereas DeMu, he has 92 gold. Difficult for him to find it. He's got to call the Imperial Militia, even though they're better than the other ages before them. They're still temporary, and the clock is going to strike midnight on them pretty soon.
Rams were never able to do that much damage other than the Fort of the Huntress. RecoN headed back into the front side again. 95 units compared to 36. There's siege there. That's all RecoN really needs to worry about, though. Taking the fight, the javelin throwers on the backside, focusing great on top of the Streltsy, and then the Sofa cleared up the front and can actually get on top of the Streltsy as well.
Yeah, again, those javelin, like the Streltsy can't sit there and get their increased attack. Right, they can't have that static deployment because there's javelin throwers just firing on all cylinders trying to take down those Streltsy. Now, military count for DeMu in terms of actual foot soldiers, we're down to 12.
Yeah, and the siege is also pretty much a bait. It says 31. There's 13 rams out and 6 Springolds. It's not actually good units or good siege units for clearing infantry and defending on up. It's more kind of defending siege and killing his opponent's buildings, which you need units to do that too.
Yeah, I mean, you see what RecoN's doing to a keep, right? Taking down one of those keeps on the eastern side, limiting more resources, and I think we saw a ram parade. There were about 10 or 11 storming in from the western side, and now there's about 4 or 5 because there's no units around to protect them. There's no units around to protect these villagers as well. DeMu down to 75 villagers right now. RecoN finally hit the triple digits.
Yeah, I mean, it all fell apart so quickly with that push, with that surround from RecoN. Absolute immaculate timing, and he can easily close this game here if he knows the situation DeMu's in. DeMu's Vil numbers continue to fall. He's down to 71. Some of those are idle too. Sofa's circling around on the farms. RecoN is everywhere.
He is absolutely everywhere. Oh my god, the amount of panic I would be in if I was DeMu in this situation. You just have villagers running for their lives, looking for a town center or an outpost to seek shelter in. And it looks like they're trying to. Some of those villagers, he's down to 64. A third of them are idled. He's got military in the queue, but when he loses them, it's over.
Yeah, and I mean, he's been losing a lot of what he has out. The Sofas are regrouping, and think about all of the passive resources that RecoN has. I feel like RecoN could delete his Vils and still win this game with how much passive resources the Mali can get.
Yeah, it feels like it, doesn't it? The siege count for DeMu, we saw it at 33, right? Now it's down to just 3. There might be a couple of rams that you see on the battlefield. That's pretty much it. These Streltsy are interspersed in different areas. He can't get a mass, and he ends up tapping out Game 5 and the series going to RecoN.
What a crazy, crazy game number 5, as I felt like that game flipped back and forth so many times. It felt so good and then so bad for either side, and ultimately RecoN just able to stay secure, able to hold it down, keep that military mass, continue to produce, and closed out the series.